Yes.
The lead Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1564 of the War News stream. And tonight we have very bad news for the Russians. The panic is starting to set in, and the reality is starting to weigh in heavy on the Russian forces. We're hearing that they're now warning of an imminent frontline collapse, as the logistics have completely been decimated across the Ukrainian backlines, that is. We've also seen major explosions erupt near Iranian military bases, and also in a really big move as well. Apparently, China's deploying near Taiwan's coast in what they call a special maritime operation, which doesn't sound very good, but it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news from around the world, but particularly from Eastern Europe, East Asia, and the Middle East, basically everything East, as we have been able to hear of significant developments within most regions of the world, but particularly from the area of the Ukrainian front lines, especially from the Russian army, as it has been covered today, at least by the Russians involved in the frontline operations and Russian military bloggers who have very close relations to those who are currently fighting for the Russian army in Ukraine at the moment, that due to the frontline and logistical situation in the southern front, it is expected that a near and total frontline collapse will be unfolding sometime before the autumn this year, meaning that there are probably the next several months left for the Russian Federation to be able to hold the southern front inside of Ukraine before they start to suffer a complete and total frontline collapse in this area due to a lack of supply. At this moment right now in Crimea, the supply situation has already proven to be catastrophic, as today the entirety of the public transportation system, not just a part of it, has shut down due to a lack of fuel, and all grocery stores, supermarkets, and other forms of food distributors have started to put significant purchase restrictions on the amount of food that each citizen can purchase due to the fact that there is no further shipment shipments of food entering the Crimean area at this point in any reasonable number to be able to even keep a modicum of food or supplies available for the public and the armed forces within the region. We've been able to hear that additionally, the Ukrainian armed forces have not been letting up whatsoever and have continued to try and conduct drone attacks against the port of Sevastopol over the day, and significant attacks at the ports around Mariupol have also started to show us that the Russian Federation's sea access via these supply routes in the Sea of Azov are also beginning to diminish and disappear as well. We can surmise that the Russian Federation's position is that of the big-eyed hamster meme as they woke up this morning and found out it's done.
Oh man, yeah, I think the big-eyed hamster meme might be an understatement at this point. I feel like the Russian mill bloggers are having pretty much an emotional breakdown today.
I think they are. They're having a very bad mental breakdown because of what happened last night in St. Petersburg, as we have been able to get the proof and video evidence as well as satellite data to be able to cover the exact attacks that were conducted within the St. Petersburg area and what exactly was hit, including the fairly large and fairly important arsenal for the Russian the Baltic Fleet, the 15th Naval Arsenal, which can be seen here around this lake called the Azhorskoye Ozero. We understand that this entire ammunition depot has been hit, and a massive fire is now raging with secondary explosions being conducted throughout the entirety of the facility throughout the course of the day after several Ukrainian drones were able to land down, hitting their targets within the area and causing what we can now describe as a raging and uncontrollable inferno across the entirety of the naval arsenal. We also were able to confirm that some form of Baltic Fleet headquarters were hit within Kronstadt last night, and there's also been a couple of other hits as well within the surrounding area. The fire at the small town of Usla-Binsk, just outside of Krasnodar, has also continued to rage throughout the day as well, with Russian firefighting teams finding it near impossible to be able to control the blaze. In the meantime, Russia is still trying to work on shoring up the air defenses around Moscow, because nothing says the country's doing fine like another pantsier on another skyscraper rooftop to try and protect against further Ukrainian attacks. Meanwhile, the Russians have also been on the way to the liquor store to go pick up more North Koreans and try and bring them into Russia to help them out with the situation that is now spiraling rapidly out of control due to the logistic failures on most parts of the southern front. We've also been able to hear that Ukrainian armed forces have inflicted significant losses onto the Russian Federation armed forces on the front today, particularly within the Slovyansk and Konstantinivka front, which have now proven to be, as far as video evidence is concerned, the most active fronts of the conflict at the moment over the past few weeks. We've also been able to additionally hear that the People's Republic of China has now announced some form of a maritime policing operation around the island of Taiwan, which appears to be another attempt at a low-level coercion effort outside of a joint sword naval and combined arms exercise, which are usually conducted twice annually at this point. We've also been able to hear that in the Middle East, some minor things have happened. The Iranians have been whining and complaining today that the U.S. broke the ceasefire by blowing up the surface search radars at Kashim and Guruk, and we've also been able to hear that they are now vowing some form of even larger retaliation. The Saudis have condemned the Iranian actions that were conducted against Kuwait and Bahrain yesterday, and the United States of America is now looking to create some form of economic cooperation ring with the Islamic Republic of Iran. In the midst of this, IRGC fast attack boats are still swarming the strait. Around 80 of them were seen in a large swarm today, most likely laying even more mines within the minefield and also checking the condition of the minefield, and some sort of an incident occurred at Karg Island, although we're not entirely sure what that one was, but there are some reports coming out that there may have been some air defense fire and explosions around the region of the island, but we're not entirely sure, once again, exactly what unfolded. We've also been able to hear that in the meantime, Israel did come under a rocket attack, and during the midst of that rocket attack, the United States has now stated that the state of Israel is officially the largest security risk and security threat to the United States of America the world over, and has actually upped it another security risk category to the highest level that we understand can be provided, due to the fact that apparently it's now been found that the Mossad and other Israeli intelligence operatives have been working within the U.S. government to try and eavesdrop and also get involved in directly controlling and possibly even blackmailing government officials within the United States of America due to the ongoing possible talks with the Islamic Republic of Iran. We are going to be covering all of this news, every single bit of it, starting with our largest stories first, which will definitely be in Eastern Europe today, and then moving our way on down into the smaller stories throughout the night, which are going to be out of the Middle East. So moving us on and into the area of Eastern Europe, we have been able to see that the Russian Federation's position is becoming, especially in the southern front, what appears to be almost completely untenable. From what we've heard today from the Russian armed forces and military bloggers that are heavily involved with listening to the news from the Russian armed forces at the front, Apparently, the situation is getting quite dire, and Russian military sources are now predicting that a collapse of the Russian front line in autumn could occur due to chronic fuel shortages and a logistical nightmare that has been created by the Ukrainian drone strikes over the past several weeks and generally over the past several months. We have been able to see that significant actions and developments have started to unfold within the southern front that appear to be showing us, at least at the moment right now, that the Russian armed forces can no longer hold the frontline area within the south and find it to be a tenable position. From what we have also been able to report by video and picture evidence yesterday and over the past several weeks, there has been a significant amount of drone strikes that have been conducted by Ukrainian armed forces against Russian sea supply routes, against Russian land routes, both by road and rail, and we've also been able to see that these strikes have started to culminate in what has become a desperate supply side situation for the Russian armed forces on the front lines and for the entire Russian logistical apparatus, which supports the supply movements up to the front through Crimea and also through the Kherson Oblast as well in particular, which appear to be in the worst crisis points that we've seen so far at the moment. From what we have heard today, the crisis of the public transportation systems in Crimea is becoming even worse. Yesterday, we were able to hear that around 400 public transport units did not operate on their routes. From what we understand, that was roughly about 35 to 40% of the entire public transportation system in the Crimean region yesterday going offline due to a lack of fuel. Today, it has now been announced that the entire public transportation system has been shut down, and in the English translation, it does appear that once again, this is due to a lack of fuel. We've also been able to hear some additional reports as well over the course of the day, including that humongous fuel lines are once again forming throughout the entirety of the Crimean Peninsula, including in this area of Yalta, where we have seen that another 1.5 mile long line of cars is waiting for the very little gas that's left that isn't even guaranteed for them if they make it to the pump after waiting in this line for hours.
Jeez. Also, by the way, you know it's got to be kind of a scary situation because these Russians sitting right here in line probably won't even get gasoline when they get to the gas station, and you won't be able to even catch a bus. Like the city buses aren't even running because the entire public transport system has collapsed inside of Crimea. So once these people run out of gas, they literally have to abandon their car where it's at, or maybe if they can be lucky enough to find a tow truck or be able to call one, maybe they can get a tow, but they're going to pretty much have to abandon their cars on the side of the road and just start walking.
You know, it's actually pretty crazy to say that because that is the fact of the matter. But what's even wilder about that is that a lot of these people that are apparently trying to get some gas or might be in the area renting a car are significant numbers of Russian tourists. And at the moment right now, the Russian Federation is apparently trying to find some way to help them out. According to Fighter Bomber stated, for tourists who have encountered difficulties leaving the Republic of Crimea, a hotline of the Ministry of Resorts and Tourism is available at the following number, said the head of Crimea, Eskinonov. I don't think you're going to be asking him much of anything. Is there any explanation somewhere about whether Russians can go to Crimea for vacation this year, or are they supposed to figure it out themselves based on such news?
I tell you what, this is really interesting as well because the people that go to vacation in Crimea are generally the Russian elite. They're the people with money. That's the people the Russians actually go to visit Crimea, to go to the beaches. It's generally people from Moscow and the surrounding areas that generally have the funds to go actually travel there. So not only are they not safe at home inside of Moscow, because Moscow's been getting hit left and right by drones, but now if they even go on vacation, they're not safe, and they really can't even make it back home because they can't get gasoline. So this is really a multi-pronged attack on the elite of Russia, which could be a turning point because those are the people that actually have some pull when it comes to what Putin's doing.
And the situation is truly desperate, given the fact that people are now having to try and figure out how the hell did they even leave Crimea, which, mind you all, the Russian government says is a legal entity in the Russian Federation. The Republic of Crimea is basically the equivalent of an oblast in reality and is operated as such by the Russian Federation illegally since 2014. And the fact that the Russians inside of quote-unquote Russian territory are having to figure out how to try and get out because they're stranded because of how bad the Ukrainians are attacking the region's supply lines is a pretty bad sort of a look for the Russian government, especially internally for the domestic situation in the country, because they have largely been insisting for 10 years, and this is why a lot of Russians are incredibly common with taking vacations in Crimea, that Crimea is a part of the Russian Federation and therefore entirely safe because they lock it down like the rest of Russia. That's at least their claim, certainly not living up to it these days. We also got to see that as well in more stores throughout Crimea and throughout the entirety of the peninsula, there are more limits of sales being put on basic goods. We can actually see here that every single good in this store that's about to be filmed has a limit of 3 per customer, meaning that they cannot panic buy, and they're trying to stretch out the supplies, the food supplies at least, for as long as they have until they completely run out. Because of the fuel situation in the region, it's also starting to heavily affect every other form of supply line that exists for food, for clothes, for spare parts, for vehicles, for the Russian military, for everybody, because all of those supply routes were operated off of the Russian roads and railways which run through Crimea. The railroads, from what we know, are hardly able to get fuel for their trains, and also the road networks are hardly able to get diesel for the semis, meaning that the transportation of all goods is grinding to a halt in Crimea. And so for that reason, these grocery stores here that are selling these goods, these might be the last rounds of goods that they're able to sell in these grocery stores before they start running out of supplies. Generally in the modern day though, just to let y'all know this isn't going to be happening immediately overnight. Usually in most areas of the world, especially here in the United States, there are distribution hub buildings that are usually in a centralized area for a certain region where trucks are able to pick up and try and ship some of the food over a very shorter distance, and also make sure that they are able to generally fluctuate to whatever sort of increased supply demand there is for specific food categories. So as long as those shorter transport movements can be made from the distribution centers in Crimea to the stores nearby, the food situation might not be that bad for the next 6 weeks, especially since they're already putting sales limitations on how many items per customer can be purchased. They'll probably be able to stretch this situation out for the next 2 months if the fuel once again lasts long enough, even for those short transport movements from the distribution hub to the grocery store aren't impeded. The food situation is going to become critical probably for the next 2 months. But it is showing us right now that they're already starting to realize, and the word has already gone out, that the food in Crimea is all the food they have left, and there's really no way to get more in. And so these sales limits are being put on every single product in the store.
Of course, the lady filming is going to take 3 of everything. They said, oh, we'll take 3. It's like, oh, of course, take the limit, of course. What the hell even is this right here? Beans or something?
It's like quinoa or buckwheat or something. I don't really know. I've never seen people just buy
like
bags of
coffee. Yeah, I thought it was coffee at first. I was like, what is that? It looks like some type of small beans of some sort, which that's a pretty bad thing to have to start rationing like dry beans and dry goods like that. That should be the most common thing in the store, but they have it like it's exclusive or something.
Yeah, and I mean, look at this. There's literally a limit of 3 on everything.
I think they did this during the virus, like here in America at some point. I think they put limits on stuff like this. Like when the virus was coming around, they had like supply chain shortages. But I mean, not even, also, by the way, look at that. That's that like Italian pasta right there. I didn't know they still had that in the Russian stores.
Oh, they just make the imitation stuff, you know. It's not real Italian. It's just looking kind of Italian, but still, it's quite interesting to know they're putting a limit on everything. They're putting a limit on the meats. They're putting a limit on the buckwheat. They're putting a limit on quite literally anything and everything that you can buy in there. Even rice. And that ought to be giving y'all once again an idea of how bad the supply situation's getting in Crimea. And before anyone says, well, that's just the civilian population, and that's not the military, that is generally operating off the idea that Russia runs a logistical apparatus like the U.S. military, which is the finest one on the planet. There is no other military in the world that does logistics as good as the United States of America does. We can get anything around the world in a remote area, for that matter, and drive it through the region, and those trucks will never have to worry about whether they be able to get back from a lack of fuel. They're always going to have fuel, and we'll find a way to refuel them. However, the Russian Federation's supply system is incredibly crude and is hardly thought out beyond the basics. The Russian Federation works largely for their logistics off of a civilian model. They use a large amount of civilian contractors to do most of the heavy lifting in the rear line areas, and only from the distribution hubs or the supply hubs near to the front, or as we call them, the railheads, to their final point of distribution to some frontline fighting unit directly on the front, that part's done by the military, but most everything else in the rear lines is done by the civilians that are contracting out with the Russian government, meaning that their semis are the same as every other semi, and they also have to go to the gas stations along the way to that distribution point for the military and refuel with diesel. And considering that Crimea doesn't have any, a lot of these civilian contractors, if they go into Crimea, they're stranding their entire truck there because there's no diesel to get to then drive it back out of Crimea and leave the area. So it is a one-way supply run trip. They will never make it out of Crimea once they arrive. So that means that the supply situation is doomed because they can't get anyone in there to give them stuff because then they can't leave either.
Yeah, I wonder if it's going to get so bad that at some point, the Crimean people, like we were mentioning last night, maybe the Russians in Crimea, after they get trapped there, they start running low on food, which is already starting to happen, and they clearly don't have any gasoline left. That might cause the people that are stuck in Crimea to get so angry and upset with the Putin regime that they're not getting any assistance, that they actually start revolting or maybe, going against the Putin regime possibly. Because, I mean, what do they have to lose at that point? They're literally starving to death inside of Crimea. So maybe at that point, the people that are occupying Crimea might actually welcome Ukrainian assistance at that point, which could be a good prelude for possibly some other actions.
It certainly could be. I mean, there's no doubt about it, especially if the situation gets desperate. One thing, folks, that always leads to some form of violent revolution is a lack of food, a lack of water, or a lack of both. That is a basic guarantee to some form of hostile or violent sort of an incident occurring is when people start to starve or start to die of thirst. Those are the two things that will guarantee violent uprisings. So that could certainly start to happen inside of Crimea, and we'll have to really kind of watch this carefully and see where it goes. We're not seeing any incidents of violence yet inside of Crimea beyond the norm, which are more low-key partisan attacks, which are still ongoing, and we don't really cover those a whole lot. But still, it could certainly start to boil out of control. We're talking about Crimea a lot, by the way, and making it seem like this is the only area affected down here, but Melitopol and the entirety of southern Zaporizhia and the whole of the Kherson Oblast are also being affected like this as well. They are as cut off by supplies right now as the Crimean Peninsula is. So while we're hearing a whole load out of Crimea, and that's generally because they're not in the occupied territories under a state of martial law, so they're a lot more free to put out a lot more information and footage of what's going on. Generally, the Kherson and Melitopol regions are also going through the very same thing. It's just that we're not getting loads of video and picture evidence to be able to confirm that, but we're most likely expecting that in towns, larger ones at least, that are in the Kherson region that are under Russian control, like the town of Skadovsk or, for example, Chaplinka or Melitopol, these areas are most likely seeing the very same issues. Public transportation is most likely ground to a halt. We're most likely seeing that food is being rationed in the stores with sales limits per customers. Gas stations have completely run out of fuel. We've definitely confirmed that in Melitopol a couple of times prior over about the past week. And so this entire area is void of anything. There's nothing at all.
Yeah, not only that, but when you really think back about it, this entire situation started when the Ukrainians started doing really far behind the line attacks using FPV drones and these new variants of drones that Ukraine's now fielding by attacking the Russian logistics highways that were going through occupied Ukrainian territory. It's since expanded from just drone attacks to now Ukraine has mined the roadways all through the rear lines in the Ukrainian occupied territories. Pretty much all those main highways are mined at this point with Ukrainian drones. So that's very bad. That's on top of the aerial attacks that were already happening. And now, as of yesterday, we saw in the Sea of Azov that all these Russian cargo ships, which are not only stealing Ukrainian grain, but they're also bringing supplies into occupied territories from the Sea of Azov, they're also now getting targeted by those same Ukrainian drones. So, I mean, at this point, the Russians really only have one way to get supplies in, and it's to do airdrops at this point. And that's risky because, of course, Ukraine has the ability to hit those aircraft when they try to fly in to do something like that. So, do you think that's a real possibility? Could they start doing emergency airdrops of supplies if they get more desperate?
Nah, not really, because it's extremely prohibitive for fuel concerns. Like, the jet fuel in Russia is hardly being produced at the moment, so we understand that that would be a huge constraint, especially if they were trying to do that on a regular basis. They would basically have to conduct airlifts like that on a 24-hour schedule. They would have to use basically every transport aircraft they have in the Russian Air Force to be able to just try and meet the minimum caloric demands of the citizens of the Crimea, much less just a single city like Simferopol or Sevastopol. So while they might be able to do that, it would be a humongous strain on their jet fuel resources, which are already incredibly low nationwide at this moment in the Russian Federation, which would put a damper on it pretty quickly because they probably run out of jet fuel and then have to greatly decrease the supply schedule. Or they would try and supply the area of Crimea, but then they just don't have enough transport aircraft to drop off enough supplies to be able to even fix the situation, except for maybe one city, and even in that one city, the supplies would be fairly sparse.
Well, it looks like all roads are pointing back to the Crimean Bridge at this point, which has always been a very big, like, symbolic target for the Ukrainians to try to hit. They haven't really successfully taken the bridge down, obviously. It's still functional. But as far as I've heard, there's apparently new weight limits the Russians have put on that bridge due to prior damage to the Crimean Bridge. But it's still an option, though. And the Russian ferry boats, they really aren't an option anymore because a lot of those have gotten hit, and also the few that they have left are pretty much at maximum capacity, as we did see a whole bunch of trucks queuing up on the Russian mainland side of the water bridge, I guess you could say, and they were trying to get on these ferries, but they couldn't even get on the boats because they were too full. So I guess the Russians might try to start cramming these cargo trucks back on the Crimean Bridge, but at that point, though, I mean, Ukraine has some very potent cruise missiles like the Flamingo. They have other missiles too in their arsenal that could end up hitting that bridge in large numbers, and that might be what takes it out.
So really quickly to look into your question here, because I'm trying to see if I can get us an answer here. Generally, if they tried to supply even just one city in Crimea, they would have to recreate the Berlin airlift, which was the largest airlift ever conducted in history, which used 300 supply aircraft flying literally endlessly over the course of, I believe it was a couple of months in the 1950s, into the city of Berlin, and they had to operate, let's see, it was the Tempelhofer Field, which was still an airport at that point, now it's a park, daily. They had to get a whole bunch of ex-Nazis from the Luftwaffe to basically operate the ground crews to unload the aircraft just to keep the city alive. And even doing all of that, they hardly were able to feed everybody a decent caloric intake during the period of time of the Berlin blockade and the Berlin airlift. So I'd actually have to say, it would probably be even more impossible for the Russians to do that across the whole of Crimea, because they're not just dealing with one city like Berlin and just trying to bring in supplies to keep the people fed at a minimum during the blockade by the Soviets. They would have to feed Sevastopol, Simferopol, Kerch. Well, Kerch would probably be an easier one because it's right across the strait, but then they had to feed Feodosia, Yalta, Alushta, Sudak, Yevpatoria, Dzhankoy, Krasnoperekopsk, Armyansk. They would have to feed so many different cities throughout the whole of the Crimean Peninsula. They would have to find a way to truck it out of Sevastopol or Simferopol to those locations, or fly in and land there. And the supply route or the supply logistics on the ground don't even support the truck movements once they unload the support at the airfields. So, I mean, it's quite truly a lost cause at this point. It's literally impossible for them to even try an airlift.
And you have to imagine as well that, remember, these logistics routes are mainly intended to supply the Russian frontline forces. That's mainly what it's intended for, because while Putin obviously doesn't want the people in Crimea to starve, or at least we don't think he does, he might not really give a crap, to be honest, but they're mainly focused on supplying the Russian frontline forces. So I would imagine whatever food is getting through, or whatever supplies are actually able to make it through that absolute highway to hell that the Ukrainians have created behind the occupied territory, most of those supplies, I imagine, are being rationed for the forces, not for the civilians, I would imagine, because that's all Putin really cares about right now, simply not losing that frontline gains that he had gotten a few while back, of course. So it seems to me like the civilians are at the bottom of the list right now, which is going to get really precarious because, like you just mentioned with the airlift, that's going to be very difficult, almost impossible to get enough food in there to actually supply the civilians through airdrops alone. So they're going to have to go back to the bridge. I think I know what's coming after that starts to happen.
Yeah, I think we're getting a pretty good idea that bad things are in store for the Russians right now on the southern front. And actually, speaking of which, a lot of people are talking about that in the chat right now, about what they believe is going to be happening in the southern front due to this logistical collapse. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so to jump right into this poll right here, it does say that Russian analysts are now predicting the collapse of Russia's front lines in Ukraine by fall. That's in just a couple of months, by the way, due to these logistics failures that we're currently seeing right now that's starting to plague Crimea and also plague the Russian frontline forces inside of Ukrainian territory. So, what are your thoughts about that? 49% said the collapse will probably happen sooner than even fall. It'll probably happen in a matter of a month, if not weeks. 28% said collapse by fall sounds about right, like the Russian analyst said, and 15% said it probably won't happen the way they're saying it's going to happen. And this right now, I mean, literally can't get worse. Ukraine is slamming literally every possible method that the Russians could bring supplies into this area. They're slamming every possible way except for the Crimean bridge. So it's very dire. Like, there's no exaggeration here whatsoever. This is about to turn into one of the largest humanitarian crises we've ever seen Russia face during the entire war. It's already there now, but it's about to get worse, and we're unfortunately about to see a lot of suffering start to kick in. So it'll be up to the Russian people whether or not they continue to abide by the Putin regime, or they finally stand up and say, we don't want to starve to death. We would rather turn to Ukraine for the help, and maybe then Ukraine will get some leeway with dealing with Crimea at that point. So I think Ukraine has a plan in mind, and I think the Russian collapse on the front line could be happening as we speak, and it could be speeding up a lot quicker than the fall. So I'm actually with the 49%. I think it could happen a lot sooner than they even predict. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that a frontline collapse is going to be happening in the fall or a little bit earlier than that, at least off of the current state of the logistics situation that we're seeing right now. And I want to make it really clear, folks, that that's crystal balling. Like, this is starting to enter a time frame that's not within the immediate next few weeks, like the next 2 weeks, for us to be able to say with pretty decent predictability or accuracy what's going to be happening. So considering that any sort of prediction here is going to be 2 to 3 months out at a minimum, this is crystal balling to a degree. But in the current conditions that we're seeing the supply lines in right now, there is no way for them to be able to hold this area. An army has to be able to get bullets to shoot, food to eat, and gas to maneuver to be able to stay on the front lines like they are right now. And considering that they aren't getting any gas to move, bullets to shoot, or food to eat, that's going to start making the Russian position in this area what is called strategically untenable. Because if you can't eat, shoot, or move, your army is completely screwed, and they're waiting to die. They're quite literally on death row, waiting for the Ukrainians to execute them at this point for just sitting around and doing nothing. And so we might see a couple of things happen. There's a couple of moves that the Russians could make. One, they could be given the order to stay on the front and hold it forever, no matter what. Even if they run out of everything, their order is to hold. That is a very likely order to be issued, given the fact that the Russian Federation is adamant that they will not lose an inch of ground at this point, although they are losing an inch of ground everywhere. If that is the case, the Russians are going to exhaust their supplies rapidly, the little bit that they have left. Most of the ammunition, especially the indirect fire support, will be spent probably within the next couple of weeks. We'll most likely see that the food and water supplies can last for some time, but the fuel supplies are going to disappear along with the civilian supplies at the exact same time, which is about right now. With that in mind, the Russians now have lost their ability to maneuver, they're starving, and they also have absolutely no firepower to directly repel a Ukrainian assault with small arms, or even to try and slow down a Ukrainian assault with indirect fire support like artillery or drone forces within this front. Given that sort of a situation, they have lost the battle. The Ukrainians will be able to outshoot them, outmaneuver them, and also continue to fight with a greater deal of morale in any given offensive within this front, meaning that once the Ukrainians make a breakthrough on the Surovikin line in this area, the Russians aren't able to go, oh damn, they broke through, let's relocate another regiment to stop them before they can push any deeper behind our rear lines, because the units don't have any fuel to maneuver anymore to stop a Ukrainian breakthrough. So once a Ukrainian breakthrough occurs, that's the end, basically. The Ukrainians just flow on through that breakthrough, encircle the Russian forces that were on the front, and then they either have to choose to die or surrender. That's going to be their two options. There is another chance that the Russians might issue the order, considering that the situation is now untenable, for the Russians to retreat out of the area. This is going to be a death sentence for Crimea if they do this, and this would also be a death sentence for the strategic position that the port of Sevastopol holds in Russian long-term global power projection strategy in the future, so this is a less likely order to be given. But if the Russian armies cannot survive, which they wouldn't be able to in this current condition if it remains this way, they might try and order a retreat and try and see about evacuating them across the Kerch Strait through Crimea, and they might also see some of the Russian forces retreat down into Mariupol and then back out of the area, or reform a defensive line around the more usable supply lines, at least at the moment, around the Donetsk Oblast, meaning that they'll lose their land bridge, and they'll definitely lose Melitopol and all of Kherson, but they might be able to try and restructure a defense for some time around Crimea and the Chanhar and Armyansk gaps to try and buy themselves some time and figure out what to do next. Those are the two likely outcomes that we're probably going to be seeing here in the near future. And when I say likely, the second outcome I've just explained is highly unlikely, but it is still one that could possibly be ordered if they have some sort of a wiser or smarter strategist, because one who is stupid would be the one who decides to keep their units on the front and to quote-unquote fight until the last man when they don't even have anything to fight with or to eat or to maneuver with.
That would be really stupid to do that. Although I wouldn't put it past Russia, though, because you know how Russia is. They don't care about their frontline forces at all. That's why they send them to their deaths by the thousands every single month. In fact, the tens of thousands sometimes. But also, by the way, I do have some news I just saw right now. Apparently, black markets are popping up in Crimea. I just got a video showing that. Apparently,
really,
it looks like the Russians are now using their gasoline cars to go get gasoline from the stations inside of Crimea. Then they'll pull into a nearby parking lot and start selling the gasoline from the tanks, apparently at a massive markup. So essentially, the Russians are starting to scalp each other with the gasoline, it looks like.
Damn. The scalpers
become
Russian. The scalpers. Oh my God.
That is very Russian right there, I must say. Although it does happen everywhere, by the way. Like, for example, when Katrina hit, of course, down the Gulf Coast, there was people doing stuff that kind of scummy stuff like this as well. But they're alleging that apparently there's some gasoline black market stuff going on. So obviously that's not good.
Dang. Man, it took them like two days of fuel shortages, like critical ones, to already see a whole black market trade form. I gotta say, man, the Russians are shifty, honestly. Like, that's pretty crazy. Yeah, like in North Korea, man, like when the March of Strife began, like it took them a little while to start setting up black markets. Dude, it took Russia 48 hours to set them up once like the fuel completely ran out.
Yeah, I would say so. It's just really wild, though. Like, of course, it's allegedly in this video, by the way. Gotta make that clear. Allegedly, but I mean, it seems pretty clear what they're doing over here, at least for just from looking at the video. But that's definitely not good, right there. I would say. So I don't know. Like, I have a feeling that after a while, I think the Russians are going to get angry because these are the elite Russians, the people that are hanging out in Crimea right now. These are the top ones that make the most money inside the Russian Federation, and I don't think they're going to put up with the stuff that the normal everyday run-of-the-mill Russians that live in the poorer regions, I don't think they're going to put up with that for very long.
I don't think they will. I would also agree with you. I don't think that's going to be the case at all. They're probably not going to be happy with the situation for much longer, and it's probably going to start leading to some negative results inside of Crimea. Additionally, speaking of the supply situation in these areas, we've also been able to hear that near to the area of Mariupol, there's also been an attack on one of the major ports near to the city, which I'll be showing y'all right here. To actually give y'all a little bit of information, apparently this port facility is to the east of Mariupol. It's not the port facility that's down here to the west that we were pointing out as the possible origin or impact site of the attacks yesterday. It's somewhere out here on the coastline. I'm not particularly sure where. I actually heard it was near Pioneerske, right around this area, but apparently I'm not seeing any port facilities to speak of here. Still, we did get to see the significant fire right here near to the port, and we also were able to see once again right here that this is the area of the town of Pioneerske, which we can see right here. There are some very, and when I say port facilities, I mean they're like fishing boat port facilities, nothing that's real or usable. But we can see that some sort of a fire is raging within that area, and it's right around there, which will show you the geolocation from Raging 545. We also were able to see additionally the fire as well in these clips. Oh, they had music. I thought that was the car rattling apart.
Yeah, look at this car though, man. Like they have no liner in the ceiling, like just straight up bare metal.
Man, that's budget cuts in Russian car manufacturing.
That's what they do. Like when they're trying to do weight savings on like race cars, they'll take all the insulation and all the linings and stuff out of it. But I don't think they were racing.
I don't think they were racing either. I think they cutting costs a little. We also get to see the burning port in this clip as well.
That's some pretty bad hits right there. And this is the one at Mariupol, you say?
Yeah, I would also have to say I think the geolocation from the first post is inaccurate because if I'm looking at this correctly, there's a large amount of cranes in Mariupol port, and there's also some fuel storage facilities here as well, right here. And that doesn't exist over at Pioneerski, so I think that was an incorrect geolocation by that one poster. It looks like this is actually Mariupol port proper, because it's not like you're going to see major port infrastructure in what is basically a small little gulf, a swamp basically, with this little tiny dock area with some fishing boats. You're not going to see anything like that around there with a whole bunch of crane gantries and whatnot. So all of these actually came from the west, like we originally believed last night, from the port of Mariupol. Still, it is showing us that the Ukrainians are trying to hit and destroy even the sea access to the land bridge, and they're trying to deprive the Russians of the ability to even pull a ship up to the coast and try and unload supplies there and try and make the supply runs a lot shorter and more direct to their point of access on the front where they're trying to deliver the supplies. We also get to see even further attacks within the Donetsk region by the Ukrainian armed forces on film, which were shown in these drone clips here from last night. They ain't playing. And now we can see them putting up the information. This was a strike that actually that was conducted in Pioneerski in the Donetsk Oblast, which is actually near that little swamp that we were geolocating. But it doesn't appear to be on any port infrastructure. It looks to be a possible supply hub building of some sort that was hit. And we can see the multiple drones hitting this building right here.
They really did a number last night. Like, that was a pretty serious attack. And also, by the way, this was the first attack since Zelensky wrote that open letter to Putin and said he was willing to meet with Vladimir Putin. And he was even going to start negotiations from the current front lines inside of Ukraine, which was a big shock that he even said that. But this was the first attack, and it was a very large attack. So I think Zelensky was sending a message with this one right here. If Putin doesn't want to play ball, then he's going to go all out, which he definitely did.
We can talk about peace until you turn blue in the face, or we can start talking about how we're going to put you to the glue factory. Pick your poison. Man, like in it, Putin said, glue factory, and Zelensky said, very well then. Like, it just started blowing up everything down here. But we can see them continuing to hit targets inside of Pioneerski. This is the entirety of the clips that we're seeing so far. Interestingly enough, not port infrastructure. It appears to be some sort of a logistics or distribution hub for the Russian armed forces, what we would kind of describe lightly as a railhead, although it doesn't have any rail access. And the drones are having free reign over the city. We've seen no air defense fire yet, once, over the whole of Pioneerski.
That's not shocking anymore to me. They're still gathering all the air defense and putting it around Moscow. Like, I'm sure we'll get to it here shortly, but they're putting a whole bunch of like these missile-based interceptors on the top of skyscrapers inside of Moscow. So I doubt you'll find any outside the capital or the perimeter roads.
Man, it sounds like the Hunger Games now. You're not going to find air defense outside the capital. Man, like
it's true. I mean, it's true. I mean, the elites in the capital. I mean, Russia operates like the Hunger Games. The people that aren't in the capital get the scraps.
Man, honestly, it's true, man. I mean, it's like, geez, it's like, it quite literally is like the Hunger Games out there. And we can also see this line of supply trucks on fire here as well.
I know that's got to hurt.
This was near Yenikeyeve in the Donetsk Oblast, which would actually be somewhere around up here near the Donetsk city area, if I'm not mistaken. Unfortunately, I can't find it off the top of my head, but I do remember the town name somewhere up here generally. But moving us on out of that little clip and out of that bit of news, and we have also seen that on the southern front, the Russians really aren't making any progress either to add to this all, because the Russians are still trying, even with the desperate supply situation that's already starting to hit the front lines right now, they're still trying to conduct offensives on the town of Wheelapal. And the Ukrainians are continuing to wipe out Russians left and right in this area as they're just running across the open fields to try and make it to the town. We see some of their trench
It's so
lines
weird
here.
looking at the footage now, and it's all green. Like, the grass is all green, the trees have greened up and stuff. I'm so used to seeing it during the spring and the winter and stuff. It's just so crazy to see it all, like, lush looking and stuff like that.
Man, it's like springtime, a rebirth. Not for the Russians, though. Like, man, it's every death for them.
Springtime for Putin, they say.
Springtime for Putin and Russia. Anyways, moving us on from that clip, we also get to see another clip of the 82nd also doing some work against the Russians in the Wheelapal front. Man, here's one of them just running across an open field. Why do they keep doing this? I have no clue. Like, oh, he tripped. We can also see this guy here in the trees. The trees sure as hell weren't speaking Vietnamese this day. We also see this guy who was just hanging out under another tree. A picnic, they call it. But the Ukrainians are generally stopping any Russian advances in this area, and we can see, interestingly enough, that all of the clips coming out of Wheelapal show that they don't have any vehicle support to speak of, and it also looks like all of them are bivouacking, if y'all are noticing that as well. A lot of them are just sleeping in like little divots in the ground and tree lines and whatnot. So it looks like whatever the situation is on the Wheelapal front, they're basically fighting like it's the 19th century. They're bivouacking in the wide open. They have no vehicle support or indirect fire support to speak of. It is just the infantry unsupported trying to still make the advances on the town of Wheelapal, and of course they're failing tremendously because the Ukrainians have a large amount of indirect fire support and also have generally better conditions and better fortifications to be able to defend the city with against the Russian attacking forces. But with that all in mind, it is time for us to start moving on out of this area, out of the southern front, because while the Russians have apparently started to notice to some extent that the southern front is suffering tremendously and is starting to get geared towards a total frontline collapse, the Russians have decided to take a trip to the liquor store. And what I mean by liquor store is that they're sending an endless amount of flights to North Korea to apparently pick up more North Koreans and bring them on in.
That's a hell of a lot of flights, by the way. Look at them making their way all the way over there. We know where they're going. Like they're going to the no man's land. They're going to Poverty Central to go pick up some supplies. So that's very desperate.
Man, like apparently it's personnel because all of these aircraft are like personnel transports, which is interesting to note. So we're guessing that they're bringing over another North Korean regiment of some sort. We're not really sure what type or what quality of unit this one's going to be. We know the first one sent over was allegedly North Korea's finest. And the Ukrainians ended up turning North Korea's finest into manure and fertilizer because they got wiped out on the fields of Kursk pretty quickly. So
wait a minute, didn't the Russians have to literally pull the North Koreans off the front line because they were doing so bad that the Russian troops were actually tripping over the North Koreans while trying to fight because the North Koreans were obviously not doing a very good job, and also some of them were getting scared and apparently causing the Russians to trip over them.
Yeah, basically that's what it was. Also, they were taking such bad losses and gaining so little ground as a result that it was a complete supply loss to keep them on the front because they were just losing tons of equipment in these endless, basically suicidal charges across open fields in the thousands, and they just kept getting mowed down by the Ukrainians in the hundreds each time they had attempted, and they'd never make it back. So the Russians were starting to view it as a complete loss. The part of the front they're occupying is a part of the front that's making no gains. All of their offensive plans are being thrown off because of it, and on top of that, that one regiment, which was made up of about, I think it was like 16,000 North Koreans, out of all 16,000 of them, I think something like 12,000 of them ended up getting killed. Not wounded, killed, and I think the remaining 30% were the ones that were wounded. So with that sort of a situation in the mix, they just pulled the whole regiment off the front, whatever was left of it, and then replaced them with the Russians.
Yeah, and I remember all the bullying that was happening. You remember the Russian forces were actually like doing horrible things to the North Koreans. They were sending them out on basically missions of death, essentially, where they knew they weren't going to come back. And also, not to mention, the North Koreans that weren't taken out got addicted to erotic imagery on their phones, of all things. So they sort of got hooked on something else that wasn't so great. And then when they weren't hooked on that, they were being sent out on these death marches, basically. So quite a bad thing. The North Koreans were really a failure. So if they're bringing more in, I'm kind of surprised.
Man, we should make a North Korean style propaganda clip about the North Korean army and Russia and say, "This is North Korea today. Many North Koreans, drinking coffee made of piss, sit there on their phones watching erotic imagery. Man, like it say something like
Man, it's crazy too. It was like letting out a like a caged dog or something like that. I'm not calling the North Koreans dogs, by the way. You know, the citizens are citizens anywhere you go. But it was like a caged dog's been in a cage too long. They let it out. It got access to the internet and went crazy. Like just went berserk. Like literally could not get them peeled away from the phones. They're too busy looking at all this imagery on the phones. It was awful. Like yeah, I had seen the reports. I even saw a video of the Russians making fun of the North Koreans for even doing that stuff. So I mean, it was wild. They literally that was their first taste of freedom, and they didn't have it for long because they got taken out by the Ukrainians.
Here we can see a North Korean barracks in the Kursk Oblast. We can see here that many of them suffer in abject conditions, wearing the lightest of blankets. This one on this bench, scratching his arm, is fiending for erotic imagery. Like, man, that man just stole a blanket. Man, like the whole like North Korean clip deal. Man, honestly, I would love to do a clip like that on him. I wish we had enough footage to show of them to do that. But still, it would be absolutely hilarious. But a lot of people are wondering what's up with the flights going out to North Korea. There's a lot of them that have been unfolding just over the past week. And it seems to be suggesting that they're probably bringing in more personnel for some unknown purpose. But, Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so what do you think is going on with this? Because it is interesting that North Korea's soldiers did not do a good job on the front lines. So it seems kind of odd that Russia would be sending out flights to go pick up more of those soldiers, which are generally useless to a large degree. But we are seeing that Russia, nonetheless, is picking up these cargo flights pretty much nonstop to North Korea and back into mainland Russia. So what do you think Putin is hoping to do here? Because at this point, it's up to everybody's guess. 44% said it's probably just weapon shipments, while 36% said it's bringing back North Korean troops for the front lines, and 14% said it's about bringing food and supplies from North Korea to Crimea. So one thing I can assure y'all of, North Korea does not have food to spare. That is one thing that I can say with certainty. North Korea can't even feed their own people, so they're definitely not feeding the people in Crimea. And also, Russia's problem is not manufacturing food. Their problem is simply transporting it to the Crimean citizens. That's their problem. So it's not that. I would personally doubt that they're bringing back troops because I'm not sure why they would do that, considering that they literally just got slaughtered by, by the dozens on the front lines, and were even hampering the Russian frontline efforts. They actually made the situation worse when they showed up. So I would be kind of doubtful that they're bringing more troops. I think it's more weapon shipments. That's one thing North Korea is doing. They've created a whole bunch of agreements with Russia to manufacture weapons on their behalf, and also it could be, like I've speculated before, and also generally has been proven to a large degree, that North Korea is being used as a proxy for China to ship weapons to Russia as well. So I think that's what they're up to. They're probably grabbing small arms, ammunition, artillery shells. They're probably grabbing things like that from North Korea and bringing them back to Russia to use on the front lines. So I'm with the 44%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'm actually going to be with the 36%. I think they're actually bringing back more North Korean troops. I think this time, though, they're not with the intention of being on the front lines fighting anyone. I think they're probably bringing in something like an engineering regiment of some sort that can generally run some sort of supplies or logistics in the rear lines, so that way they can try and relieve or relinquish some of their additional Russian personnel in the army to put them into combat roles in infantry regiments, so that way the Russians can kind of do a little bit of restructuring with their remaining personnel and put more of them into the active fighting, and then let the North Koreans take up the logistical, basically the mule work in the background that doesn't require them to be tactically proficient. It just requires them to be there and, to push the right buttons, to press down the right pedals, and to do the job. So I think that's generally what they're probably trying to do, because we already know that Russia has run into a significant manpower shortage on the front lines and the rear lines. Russia is thinking about implementing child labor again to try and deal with the labor shortage, and they've also been shipping in migrant laborers from Africa and India like there's no tomorrow. I mean, plenty of videos that we've seen over the past few months have been showing that quite clearly. So I think that they're bringing in North Korean personnel because, once again, all of these aircraft are not aircraft that you can load any military equipment into. They're like, basically almost Aeroflot passenger aircraft, so they're definitely picking up some personnel. You can't put an MLRS in a passenger seat on a commercial airliner, so they're definitely bringing back North Koreans into the Russian Federation, probably some sort of an engineering or logistics regiment to run rear line support functions and relieve more manpower for the Russians, at least for their frontline operations.
Could be, honestly. I still would think it's probably like I see people in the chat saying it too. They're saying it could be that maybe they're bringing in a whole bunch of like air defense interceptors or something like that. I'm not sure about that specifically, but I feel pretty certain that they're probably just picking up a whole bunch of shipments of ammunition and things like that and artillery shells. That's my guess because, like I said, they can't get food from North Korea. It's basically a food desert. And also on top of that, I really doubt it's troops. I would have to stick to my guns on that one. I think it probably is ammo.
But the thing about that, though, and like, here's why I'm saying, like, I'm finding that just unlikely. Like, let's look at the models here of the aircraft that are flying out to North Korea. There's an Airbus A319, a Sukhoi Superjet 95, an Ilyushin 96, an A148. Let me actually pull that one up. Maybe that one's one of note. 148 and A148. So that is a regional jet model. So all of these right now are configured just solely for, like, transport of people, not really any cargo. The T-134, that then disappeared. Then we see them all making their way over. And a T-204, let's see, a Tupolev 204. I think that's a larger, like, medium-bodied, let's see, yeah, passenger aircraft as well. Actually, here's one in the Air Koryo paint scheme. Right here is a passenger aircraft. So all of them are passenger aircraft.
Beautiful. You gotta love Air Koryo. I think Air Koryo was voted a #1 best airline by Kim Jong-un.
Man, I think it's been voted #1 best airline every year forever, according to the North Koreans.
Man, I wonder why. I wonder if it has something to do with it being their only airline.
I think it's the fact that most North Koreans don't know of another airline. Like, they don't know that there's other airlines out there, probably. But, you know, all of these aircraft, though, like, getting back to, like, the meat of the matter, they're all passenger aircraft. And you can't really do cargo shipments well with those. If they were sending IL-76s, they're definitely picking up material equipment. Like, they're picking up guns, they're picking up munitions. But then also, on top of that, why would they do that by plane? Wouldn't they do that by train? That would be a lot more efficient in terms of cost and also in terms of fuel consumption, considering that fuel is running out across all of Russia. So I think that this is really personnel transports because the type of aircraft, they're all passenger aircraft, and also it would be materially inefficient for Russia to transport ammunition, which is fairly cheap, by aircraft, which is an expensive form of transport.
Now, I will say this. I think that the way your argument might have merit, at least in my opinion, now it's a fair argument, but I see Old Warrior saying that Stalin was famous for bringing in East Russia troops to quell riots, like in Hungary. Now, I could see that. I don't personally see Russia bringing in a whole bunch of North Koreans to fight on the Ukrainian front lines because they were useless and they made the situation worse. But I could see North Koreans being brought in to maybe quell Russian civil unrest. Now, I could see that because that doesn't necessarily require, the frontline slog. That requires expertise and also a lot of training to actually make it work. That simply requires basically civil policing skills, which the North Koreans would generally be able to pick up pretty easy. So maybe that's it. Maybe Putin's getting so worried that there's going to be unrest inside of Russia because of the recent crackdowns on the internet and things like that. And now the Crimea crisis is starting to pop up, that maybe he's bringing in these people as civil security guards for mainland Russia.
Well, I mean, I kind of already covered this prior, but they don't have to be fighting to be brought over and be involved in the war. There's a lot of support roles that they could do that don't require them to have to be on the front lines actively fighting the Ukrainians. And that's what I was saying prior, that's the whole reason they're being brought over, is because they have no martial capabilities, but they can, like anyone, do simple tasks like driving a truck, unloading equipment, which is just menial labor. And so I think you might have missed that when I was saying that earlier addressing the poll. But
that's you say civil security guards?
No, I said they were probably going to be put into some form of logistics or rear line work where they don't have to actively fight.
No, I'm saying civil security guards, like specifically like backing up the FSB and also the domestic security forces in case there's civil unrest inside of Russia. That's what I'm saying.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you said right there, you're like, well, your argument would have merit if they're not going and actively fighting on the front. And I was like, well, it does have merit because I've said in my own analysis, like, they're not actively fighting on the front. They're probably going to be in rear line and supply, something like that, or, in some sort of an engineering unit to build defenses, something that doesn't require them to be actively fighting Ukraine. That's what I was saying, because there's no way that they can transport munitions on a passenger aircraft effectively or efficiently for that matter. And also they probably do that by rail because that's how we've seen them transport all the munitions from North Korea prior. So to me, it would look clearly like they're transporting over personnel, and whatever they're transporting them over for, it's definitely not a combatant role. It's some sort of a non-combatant support role in the Russian army, because they're probably trying to find a way to get rid of the Russian logistics regiments, break them up or dissolve them, and then just distribute that manpower into the frontline fighting units that the Russians have, so that way they can keep Russian units on the front, which are qualitatively better than North Korea, and then just replace those missing logistics regiments with North Korean ones instead.
Maybe so, but I think if they were being brought in, it would probably be for like civil security or something like that. That's probably my guess.
Maybe so. We'll generally have to see, because it's anyone's guess at this point what Russia could be needing with a whole bunch of North Koreans. But eventually we'll find out. So we'll have to see. It'll be interesting though, regardless, however it goes. But moving us on out of that news near Moscow of the North Korean flights, or more so the flights to North Korea, we have to start moving on up to St. Petersburg, because we have been getting some absolutely insane news out of St. Petersburg over the day. But before we get to this news that came out of the St. Petersburg area, I do have to say that we are entirely honored and greatly appreciative that so many people have been here over the course of the night. Tonight, we have had 17.3 thousand people here at the peak, which I've got to say is unbelievable. Yesterday, because we had a breaking news show yesterday, and we only had like 16.1 thousand people here at the peak. Tonight, we ran a normal show, and I think we had like 1.1 thousand more live viewers, which is really crazy. But I gotta say that we're entirely honored and greatly appreciative of all of y'all showing up so far. Make sure to stick around. We still have a lot of crazy news to go, especially out of St. Petersburg, and also some interesting developments out of East Asia and the Middle East. But before we get into all of that,
I think honestly, I think people are tired of hearing the negative news out of the Middle East. I think that's why people are showing up, because I will say today we actually have, like, in the scheme of the Ukraine war and Ukraine winning, I mean, this is about as good as it gets. A frontline collapse is literally the worst case scenario for Russia. So I think that's why people are showing up, because for once we actually have positive news for Western forces instead of the negative stuff.
Man, I gotta say, folks, good news sells. It sells. I just wish we had more of it. With that in mind, before we get on into the rest of all the good news we have tonight, and then also the news out of the Middle East, I do want to make sure that we take a brief moment to get 3 questions out of the chat before we get into the rest of it. So, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping into our first 3 super chats. Our first one goes to none other than a channel legend. It is BC Skyman, and thank you very much, BC. Hey! He threw in a combined $90 support, by the way, and we do appreciate that very much. That is the largest combined super chat of the night, and of course, BC Skyman, we appreciate that very much. That is what keeps our channel running each and every day, and without that support, it would be impossible to run the channel. So a huge shout out to BC Skyman, and also all of our super chatters tonight that we'll get to in just a minute, but a huge shout out to BC especially. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta thank you incredibly for the support, that unbelievably massive support, BC Skyman, and it's great to see you again. I hope that the HVAC business has been doing well, because I just saw you in the chat saying to some folks that it's been really busy, and I bet it would be. The start of the summer down in the south is always when the HVAC business gets busy, because it starts getting boiling down there. It was boiling out in Salt Lake today, though. It was like 91 degrees out here, but it wasn't the kind of heat that you get in the south. It was kind of more of a dry heat. Like, I'm not even exaggerating. It was actually like a drier heat out there. So it wasn't extremely bad, but I still don't like hot temperatures. Like, it's just not really my thing, And I will have to say, I'm very happy that we don't have to deal this year with like those extremely super humid, hot southern summers. Because there's a lot of cool things in the south, but the summers certainly aren't one of them, at least to me, because it just gets so hot. You can hardly do anything outside without feeling like you're getting beat to death by the elements, basically, just in a normal day. But I do have to say, it's a great thing to have you here tonight. I hope that you've been doing well and staying cool out there while working on folks' HVACs. And I thank you incredibly for supporting the channel and helping it to keep on running, because folks like you are old guards and channel legends of the show. If there ever was an old guard of the Lee Spring Army, and there was only one of them, BC Scammon would be the one. He's been around forever, since day 4 of our news coverage. And I've got to say that we're entirely honored and greatly appreciative of your support, and you being here up until this very day, and supporting this channel so that we can keep making this news possible for millions around the world. And so a humongous thanks to you so much once again. And also, BC Scammon, I definitely agree. Down there, Alabama and South Georgia, Good God, it would get so hot. I mean, it would get so hot, folks. For the folks who've never been to the Southeast, it gets so hot in the Southeast. They don't tell you this, by the way, most of the time about the South, but it'll get up to like 100 degrees down there on most days in the summer in Alabama where we lived, and at 100% to 90% humidity every day. So like 100 degrees really felt more like 115. And you would go outside and it would feel like the sun is literally beating you down. Like it's just like a fist slamming you on the head and beating you down to the ground with how hot and humid the weather would feel every day. It's like the summers down there are brutal. Like it's tough to do anything. Like basically in the summer you can't really do much outside. You just got to wait for the fall and the spring, and then the winter is a pretty good time because they have like down there it's fairly mild winters. Like the coldest it usually gets is like the 50s, which isn't bad at all. But a pretty interesting sort of weather element down there. But a huge thanks to you once again for the support, BC Skyman, and we're on to the next one.
And our next one here is going to go to none other than Robert Betancourt. And thank you very much, Robert, as well, for the $50 support and helping to keep the channel running. And Robert said, I made $1,000 working the election in California. And I didn't know you could make that kind of money working an election like that. I wasn't aware of that. I never actually looked into it, but that's actually pretty solid right there, I would say. But thank you very much, Robert. And Enforcer, what say you?
That's crazy. $1,000 to work an election. I never knew there was that kind of money. Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer. I'm running to be a candidate for an election official. But I gotta say though, really impressive stuff, Robert Betancourt, and also a good thing that you were a part of conducting the civic duty of helping to run the elections and make sure that the elections are run fairly. It's an integral part of our democracy here in the United States of America, that people's votes are heard and that their representatives are elected, and it's a good thing to know that you were a part of that incredible and very American democratic process. So a humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And also, before we get off of this one, I see some people talking about the heat deal, and a lot of people are like, yeah, you know, it is hot as hell down here. I'm glad that's something that everyone can agree on. Y'all know something interesting. The South doesn't have this these days because of air conditioning, but back in the day, the U.S. Southeast was the only part of any English-speaking part of the world that got close to having something akin to like a Central American siesta, if y'all didn't know. During the midday in most of the South historically, like during the basically ever since the beginning of colonial history and American history in the Southeast, from about 11 a.m. to 2 a.m. in the afternoon, most stores in the South would actually shut down. Everybody would close up their buildings, like cover the windows with curtains and whatnot, and they'd go out on the porches and balconies, or they'd just go home and they'd sit outside and they just fan themselves and drink anything cool like lemonade and whatnot, or get ice cream from like an ice cream stand. And they actually had ice cream back in the day. That's a whole other rabbit hole for a whole other time. But they'd sit there and just wait out the heat for a couple hours and just try and stay in the shade and stay cool, because otherwise you would just die a heat stroke back then. And so the South generally was not wasn't industrial whatsoever, because you would die if you ever tried to work in an industrial space in the middle of the day in that kind of heat. The air conditioning is actually what led to the industrialization of the South, and nowadays in the U.S. Southeast, it's one of the most industrialized areas of the country. Kind of an interesting fact about how life has changed so much because of air conditioning, which for the South is as important as the invention of the steam engine. But a huge thanks to you so much once again for the support, Robert Betancourt, and I hope that was an interesting little tidbit of historical information about the South and the heat down there. And with that, we're on to the last question of the segment, and then we're going to be moving on to the rest of the news for the night.
All right, so this one goes to none other than Chef Danny B, also another channel legend, the official chef for the LSA. And thank you very much, Chef Danny B, for that $50 support. We do appreciate that. He said, good evening, Enforcers. Chef Danny here. It's very rare I come out firing super chats at the beginning of the streams, but great streams lately. I haven't been chatting much, but I have been listening, and LLT, LSA. And also, that's totally fine, Danny B. We have a lot of people that we call lurkers. The channel lurkers, we call them. Brand new term, lurker. We just invented that right now. But we have a lot of people that do that, because and not everybody chats 24/7. Like, we have channel legends that will sit in the chat. Sometimes they'll pop into chat. Sometimes they'll watch the show. And also, we have other people too. There are actually other YouTubers that watch from time to time. They occasionally pop in the chat, and you'll see them occasionally in here. So that is totally fine. But we do appreciate support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And Chef Danny B, it's always an honor to know that we have millions of American lurkers who watch this channel, and I've got to say that we're happy to know that you're always one of them. We love to know that folks are always listening and watching. We always love to get to hear from y'all every once in a while as well, and know that y'all are doing well and that things are good. And I'm really happy to hear that you've been enjoying the show lately. We put our heart and soul and effort into this every single day to make the news coverage the best it can possibly be. And I would have to say that it is an absolute honor to know that you have appreciated this show and all of the the streams recently, and have found it worthwhile to support the stream early. We thank you incredibly for that, and we thank you for helping this channel to keep on rolling. Also, by the way, if y'all are wondering why in the world, because I see a lot of people going like, American lacquer. Like, what does that mean? It's a reference to this whole thing. Like, there was like this political speech that was made by this guy who I think was the union head of, what was it, Matthew? The Teamsters or something like that, and he said the American worker. And so, like, me and Matthew found that memeable. Like, in our heads, has been an inside joke amongst us for a while. Is like the American worker. And so when the word lurker came up from folks who don't talk a lot in the chat, I just took the joke and then molded it from American worker to American lurker. And so I just say it in that way, just to let y'all know a little bit behind the context of the joke. But still, a huge thanks to you so much once again for support, Chef Danny B. Long live the Lee Spring Army. And with that, it's time for us to get on out of this question segment and into the rest of the news that we got from around the world. And speaking of that, we're going to be getting right back into Russia and continuing our news coverage up in St. Petersburg. Up in St. Petersburg, things went poorly yesterday. Apparently so poorly, the Russians had to announce that they shut off the internet. In accordance with the recommendations of the operational headquarters, or according to Alexander Beglov, who is the mayor of St. Petersburg, I asked St. Petersburg residents to remain indoors and not go outside. Mobile internet service may be disrupted. Further information on the elimination of the air threat will be provided. So it looks like they literally cut the phone lines and stopped the spread of disinformation from how bad the attacks were going yesterday. And they went badly. If y'all didn't think they were bad yesterday, they went horrifically. We were able to get some of the reports of the strikes out of the area, and to just name off a couple of them, they hit the 15th Naval Arsenal, the Kronstadt Naval Base, and the Foch Institute of Physics. I gotta say...
The what?
That's one.
The what? What are they studying here?
They studying the concept of Foch.
Wow.
It's a fucking great institute. Like it's
Damn, that's crazy work right there. I've never heard of the physics of that.
Man, it's literally spelled F-O-C-K. Like, I'm not joking. That's literally the word. I don't know why it's called that, but, you know, one hell of an interesting place up there. You know, we didn't get any clips of it on fire, at least yet, but we might in the future. We also got to see some general clips across the whole area of the attacks that were conducted in the St. Petersburg area, and here's just a montage of some of the interesting clips from the wider area of the strikes and everything that's on fire right now.
Oh.
That's Kronstadt, we believe.
Yeah, I think that's the clip we saw yesterday right there. I was about to say, it looked menacing at first. I was like, wait a minute, I think I've seen this before.
Бля, уже 12-й, что ли, нахуй?
Yeah, we definitely saw this yesterday. I saw this one last night.
We didn't see this one. We did not see this one. I was sitting there thinking, I was like, damn, are all these like clips we saw last night? We definitely did not see this one. That one might actually be the Foch Institute of Physics. Man, I gotta say, you know, I actually heard that a lot of those North Koreans who were looking at those erotic images on their phones, I heard that they were also starting the study of the Foch Institute, but I'm not entirely sure. We also got to see in huge news that the 15th Naval Arsenal just outside the city, right here, also appears to have been blown up. Also, there's apparently a hotel on the perimeter called More. I think I'd want less. Actually, yes, looking at this looks like the back rooms. I think I'd want less.
Damn. That looks like that beach in that place that dude tried to pull up and give those people that had never like spoken to like normal humans before. He tried to hand them a Coke and they tried to kill him.
You know, it kind of does look like that. I also got to say, this natural scenery here of these trash bags really...
This is definitely Russian, I could tell.
Man, and also look at this, man. Wow, they've got that dobry, and they got beets or tomatoes or something, and some water. And something else here. Looks like maybe some sok, which is juice in Russian. And they also have these little pieces of meat in this little cooker thing. And it looks like they're cooking out of a box. Pretty ghetto kind of a setup here, but I guess it works, you know. Like they're literally on a beach right on the side of the interstate. This person's apparently building a snowman that's throwing it back.
That's the institute of, you know what?
Oh, damn, they giving it that stanky
Whoa,
leg. Oh,
hell,
yo, get it. Hey, yo.
This is kind of lewd right here or something. I tell you, I don't know about these Russians, man. Russians, you know, their minds are in the gutter.
Man, that oddly erotic snowman vibe on the side of the interstate near a beach. I'd have to tell y'all that this Moore area here, I don't really know about it, but anyway, south of it is this giant naval arsenal, and it is on fire. Allow me to show y'all. Here's the clip. Oh, that's music. I thought that was the fire.
Ah, yes, the fire is raging here.
Ah, yes. I see you know your arsenals well. Good one. And you, sir, are you ready to receive my lip arsenal? But here's also a heat map of the area. It looks like the whole northwestern side is burning right now. Almost every single building up there is on fire, which is pretty impressive, I'm not gonna lie. You can also see some of the munitions stored in the wide open, as the Russians do, as custom by their tradition. But moving us on out of that bit of news up there at the 15th Naval Arsenal, and out of the whole of the city of St. Petersburg, it appears that these attacks on St. Petersburg have really highlighted the vulnerability of the St. Petersburg city area to Ukrainian drone attacks. So in response to that, Putin and his genius has decided to add more air defenses to the city of Moscow instead, which we were able to see in this clip as they're dropping off another pantsy air defense system on another skyscraper.
Did they add that pad on top of it? Like, what is that absurd, like, pad that's on top of the skyscraper?
From what I know, that was already on top of the building, but I'm not entirely sure.
Oh, look, they have a watcher over here. It's just watching this whole thing. This is the goofiest stuff I've ever seen, literally lowering it on top of a building. It's like, can that building even tolerate that much weight being put on the roof?
Probably not. But do the Russians care? Nah. Like, bro, they don't care at all. So, you know, something else, you know, to speak of there. I mean, they found out St. Petersburg's weak on air defense, so they just added more air defense to Moscow and didn't do anything to fix St. Petersburg. Real Russian logic coming out in its finest. We also got to see that down in Tyumen, it appears that there was also a fire on a refinery here. This apparently wasn't caused by a Ukrainian attack, but it was a nice one.
Отлично за шляпа. Мы вот здесь вот были. На самом верху, горит, ебать,
Looking like Chernobyl out here.
прикинь, как уебет, это вообще пиздец.
Jeez, man. Why does the audio and the, like, visuals sound like the start of a Live Leak video? Like, you know that really bad quality, like, 8-bit video or something like that? It's like the Lively thing.
Ah, yes, you mean those early 2010s Chinese workplace casualty videos. like
Yeah, it's like recorded with a, like, a potato or something.
Man, in those videos, you would always hear it. It'd be like, like there'd be something like that kind of audio quality. It'd be like, damn, can they get a better phone to film this on? You know, for our internet viewing. But there's a fire at that Tyumen again.
And you said this was not caused by a Ukrainian attack?
Apparently not. I mean, it's farther than any attack we've ever seen so far. The farthest drone attacks we've ever seen were Chelyabinsk and Yekaterinburg, and this is about another 150 miles east. So unless the Ukrainians got some sort of a magical drone, which Osin Tentacle is saying it's a drone. Osin Tentacle is saying it's a drone attack. Hold up.
I hate to tell you, man, but this is actually an attack here. I was about to say, that's why I was double checking with you on that. This is one of the longest ones they've conducted, but yeah, they're saying, I thought it was maybe possibly a cruise missile, but they're claiming in the post it was drones. But yeah, I was like, there's no way that thing caught on fire just on its own.
But it can't be. It can't be, because the longest range drone we know of is 1,250 miles. This thing is at 1,330 miles. Like, I think that would be out of range.
That's why I was thinking it was a cruise missile, because I think the fire point missiles, like the Flamingo, I think they can go possibly this far, I believe, but the drones would be stretching it a little bit. So it seems like an attack to me. Like, I'm not sure if it was a drone or a missile, but it definitely seems like an attack, because that fire is way too large, and also right in the dead center of the actual refining unit itself. This simply be some random spontaneous fire.
I don't know, man. I don't know, because this is so far away. Like, this would be the longest range attack ever conducted, and also, we haven't seen any clips yet showing the drones coming in, or a missile coming in, and that's kind of leading me to believe maybe it isn't a Ukrainian attack, maybe it just happened, because we don't have any proof of anything coming in yet, and usually we have that. Like, we have that in every incident. We even had that for Yekaterinburg and Chelyabinsk.
Yeah, I mean, I was double checking here to see if I have the video of that. We don't have the video. I see some people saying that a fire or a blaze broke out. I see Noel reports saying that, but then I see a whole bunch of other reports claiming that it's a drone attack. So I guess at the minimum we can say it's undetermined, but I don't know. Like, that's a pretty big fire right there to be simply a spontaneous one. I guess it's possible, but it looks like very similar to a drone attack.
I'm going to have to say I think it probably was more so just an incident more than a drone attack, because we don't have any footage at all of a drone near that area right now whatsoever, like on the approaches to the city, in the city, or at the refinery hitting it, or a missile for that matter either. And if there was a missile that hit, we would definitely have footage of that as well, because the air raid sirens would have gone off, there would have been this whole ordeal, and it doesn't appear that there was any of that around there. So I'm believing that it's probably an incident that happened, and I think that's also why, a lot of people are, well, some people are saying it wasn't an attack, it was just an incident. Others are saying that it is a drone attack, is because it might be a little bit unclear. So I would say that's indeterminate as well, because there's really no proof to show at the moment definitively that it is or isn't a drone or missile attack. But this would be the longest range one of the war if it was. And that's also the reason why I'm thinking this is a little bit unlikely, because if it was, I feel like the Ukrainians would say something about this as well. Like the Ukrainian MOD, they would be like, we've just extended the range of our attack drones even farther, and they just hit Tumen. Because, I mean, this is literally the farthest out we would have seen anything at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I at this point, I would rule it out just because it's too far, but I don't put anything past the Ukrainians anymore. Like, we've seen that one that was way up there at the top. There was like some spot almost like near Siberia. Go back to the Google map for a minute and go back up there. I can't remember the name of it or off the top of the bat. Scroll up to the top of Russia. There was like some little peninsula up here that they hit. You know what I'm talking about? It was like some refinery up here. You know
Wasn't
what I
it
mean?
near that like little shitty town, like Varzuga or something?
No, let me go get my own Google map here. I need to find
I mean,
this out.
that's not that far though, because this is a Mercator projection, so things look a lot larger the further north or south you go from the equator. I mean, that's only like a range. Let me measure it out here. That's like a range of like 1,000 miles. Even to the north, the very north of Russia, that's 1,200 miles, which we do know that's in Ukraine strike range. All of that would be. But when you start getting out towards a place like Yekaterinburg or Chelyabinsk, that would also be at the very extent range of the farthest drone attacks we know of right now.
Yeah, they've gone really far. I can't remember the place right off the bat, and I can't really find it that easy. But they've done some very far ones. So I mean, I wouldn't put it past the Ukrainians. It seems like every day these days they're coming out with longer and longer attacks, but using new weapons. So I don't know. We'll just have to leave this one up for debate.
I suppose so. I suppose. Hopefully, we'll get a Ukrainian statement saying they actually conducted that attack. That would kind of settle the whole matter altogether. But moving us on out of that and on out of the Russian Federation for a minute, we are actually going to be moving on and over into the Strait of Taiwan, or as they call it, the Formosa Strait. According to some information that's come out today, the People's Republic of China is now launching a special maritime operation east of Taiwan, ramping up its response to a recent agreement between Japan and the Philippines to negotiate maritime borders in the area and deepen defense cooperation. We've also been able to hear additionally another statement that came out very similar to this as well, but Geo Insider went into a little bit more details. For anyone tracking it, the real question is whether it shows up on AIS at all, and with these units, the honest answer is usually not much. The gap is to point, the PRC Coast Guard and the maritime safety ships around Taiwan have a long habit of running dark, switching off AIS during exactly these law enforcement sorties, and Taiwan's own Coast Guard has called it out repeatedly as a way to stay untrackable. There's a documented spoofing problem on top of it. Fake PRC signals planted near the island muddy the picture, and the absence from the map is an absence from the water. The next thing to read is whether Beijing puts out an official poster naming the holes the way it does when it wants an operation seen, or keeps the ship quiet and lets the announcement carry the weight. The first means it's theater for an audience, the second means the presence is the message and the proof is meant to stay deniable. Either way, the announcement is loud and the ships, for now, are not. So it looks to be another low-level coercion effort, once again being conducted by the People's Republic of China against the Republic of China on the island of Taiwan, mostly to try and build up some pressure against them, and also try and show that Taiwan is attempting to, actually the Communist Chinese are once again trying to exert direct influence and treat Taiwan's territorial waters as China's territorial waters by possibly allowing the Chinese Coast Guard to operate within the territorial waters and exclusive economic zone of the Republic of China on the island of Taiwan. We've seen these sorts of incidents unfold in prior times over the course of the stream with the Operation Joint Sword military exercises and other impromptu, immediately declared exercises that have also been conducted unscheduled as well, and it appears that China is continuing to keep pressure high against the Republic of China on the island of Taiwan to try and force them into thinking that they have no other option than to meet with the Chinese, the communist ones, and try and agree to a one-state, two-system solution. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that right now, and what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so China did launch, like we just went over, apparently a special maritime operation, which I'm not sure if they named it that way to, sort of make it sound like the Russian operation in Ukraine, but that's kind of interesting. They chose very similar wordage to that. But they've launched this operation near Taiwan. They've now deployed a whole bunch of Chinese vessels and also military assets around the island as tensions are now escalating because recently Japan kind of stood up to China along with the Philippines, and now China's not happy about that, so they're acting out. So what do you think it is? 55% said China is restarting their coercion campaign against Taiwan, while 22% said China is simply bluffing and acting out because they're angry about Japan's actions, and 19% said China is about to invade Taiwan, and that's what this is. So it's impossible to say they're about to invade. Like, that's purely impossible to say that. Of course, we could have said that a million times over at this point. It's always seeming like China's about to attack, but it's hard to tell. So I'm not really ready to say that. To me, it seems like China's simply ramping up their coercion campaign. They are very, very livid that Japan and the Philippines are ganging up together against China about the Taiwan situation, and this is their way of acting out. So that's what I think this purely is. It's simply China's way to basically say F you to the Japanese and the Philippines. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I would actually agree as well. It's definitely just a continuation of their low-level coercion campaigns that they conduct against Taiwan. There is no war coming out of this anytime soon. I'm saying, and I've been dead set on this for a while, folks, that China is not ready to start a war with Taiwan right now. They're still building out military capabilities to make that possible, but that's still going to take some time, and that's going to be sometime with the starting of the window being possibly at the earliest 2027, and at the normal time frame it would be 2028, because for decades now the idea, well, not decades, but for the last decade, the idea has been, watching how quickly China's building out their maritime, air force, and military capabilities, that the invasion window for Taiwan is probably going to be the highest, or the highest likelihood, during 2028 to 2032, because that's going to be the first time in history they will be capable of supporting a landing on the island of Taiwan, and also whittling down Taiwan quickly enough to make that a reality without an international backlash being significant. So I would have to say I think that's definitely the case, at least in my opinion, and I would think that the coercion campaigns are just continuing at this point. I'd also say that the prior U.S. meeting with China hasn't really done anything to tamp that down or make China feel less confident about these actions, because we largely seem to be appeasing them the last time we went over there to Beijing. So not really that good of a move.
Although the U.S. did say that they are looking to sell those weapons packages to Taiwan, which, by the way, has already been approved by Congress, so it's not like it's being held up by Congress, it's being held up by the executive branch. So they did say they're looking to sell them, but I don't think they've finalized it yet. They still haven't finalized it, but I think they're testing the waters to see how China's going to react to it. So this might have an effect on that weapons package. The U.S. could view this as some sort of backlash to it, and they might back off because they see that, which would be a weak move, but we don't know at this point.
Yeah, that could also be the case as well. I mean, it's hard to say, at least at the moment, but the Chinese are definitely trying to game out the situation to try and come out on top. And also, I saw someone bring up in the chat a moment ago, someone said, one state, two systems solution. Pff, look how that turned out for Hong Kong. You're absolutely dead on the nail, actually. That's a big reason why Taiwan didn't agree to a one state, two systems model with China, because the Kuomintang, which is still a political party in Taiwan, is a hyper-nationalist party, but that also somehow has turned them into being pretty much a Chinese communist simp, for the larger part, is the best way to explain it these days, because they say that because Taiwan is a part of China, and the Taiwanese people are Chinese, because most of them ethnically are, that for the concept of nationalism, they ought to unite Taiwan with China just for the hell of it. That's the Kuomintang's position on foreign policy. The opposition party, which is currently in charge of the government right now, views the situation as one where Taiwan is largely a separate country, not reliant on China, or a China for that matter at all, and they're a totally different country that has no dealings with China. And so that's the two different foreign policy positions in Taiwan. And the Kuomintang was gaining a lot of momentum before the Hong Kong riots started in 2019 on maybe agreeing with China for a one-state, two-systems solution. But then once the riots started in Hong Kong in 2019 and the Chinese immediately backed off of all of the agreements and terms that they had made with Hong Kong on the one state, two systems model, and they started to crack down on the public, that was when the Chinese people in Taiwan and the Taiwanese government went, ooh, this is not a good move to reunite with China. They could end up curb stomping us or doing something a lot worse to us if we agree to that, because we basically lost all of our autonomy and authority to do anything otherwise. So then they completely backed off of that, and that's also started to change the domestic politics, at least on how they handle their foreign policy with China since then, because of what happened in Hong Kong. So that's actually a good observation by when you put that in the chat there, because that's literally the reason that a lot of people in Taiwan say that a one state, two systems model would never work, because the communist Chinese are authoritarian and they don't respect those sorts of governmental systems. But moving us on out of Taiwan and East Asia, we now have to move on into the Middle East for a brief moment before we get to the Ukrainian front lines. I know, many people just want us to get through this, and I'm saying, I don't even know if many people want us to just get on right through this. I'm telling you all my personal opinions basically at this point. I kind of just want to get through this and get it done and over with. So we're just going to cover it and just knock it out. The news is what it is coming out of the Middle East today, and then we're just going to move on to more important stuff that's going on. So moving us on into the Middle East, we have been able to hear that the Iranians threw a hissy fit over the day and claimed that the United States violated the ceasefire by striking the radar and coastal surveillance facilities in Surik and Kashem Islands, which has violated the April 8th ceasefire. So the Iranian Foreign Ministry has claimed that the ceasefire has been broken, just blatantly at this point, which would lead us to believe that they're going to respond. We haven't seen a response yet, interestingly enough, and it doesn't really look like there's one coming around the corner, at least right now. It might be coming tomorrow, but not in the immediate vicinity of the next few hours. We've also been able to see that there has been a significant boat swarm once more within the Strait of Hormuz. There's about 80 of them here in the satellite picture. This was taken today, and the swarm was so large it could be seen from space, and the wakes could also be seen from space as well. Just to give you all a little bit of an idea of what the Iranians are doing today. We're believing that this is most likely an attempt to lay another minefield, because they did sail right into the area of the minefield and then made it immediately right back out. We can also see the zoomed in picture here showing the large column of 80 of them over here, and then another number of them further on up to the north, but a far smaller formation. Additionally, we've also been able to hear that near to the area of Bandar Abbas, it does appear that there were some aircraft in the sky. We can see them moving around, and there's that tiny little blip of light right there.
Just a small little target up there, very hard to hit.
We don't know if that's Iranian or American or whose, but it was up there over Bandar Abbas tonight. We didn't hear of any air defense fire, so we're assuming it might be Iranian. We've also been able to hear that in the meantime, the U.S. intends to use available tools to make Iranian assets accessible to Gulf allies, funding rebuilding and repairs for future damage caused by Iran. So basically,
That's an insult to injury right there, isn't it? The Iranians are wanting that money back, by the way. The Iranians are saying that if the U.S. wants to make a deal, then the U.S. will have to give back all those frozen assets, basically right back to Iran, which is multi-billion dollars of assets. So if the U.S. follows through with this right here is like basically like slapping the Iranians in the face to a large degree, which is actually a pretty decent move.
So basically what they're doing is a liquidation scheme of frozen assets. This actually probably sounds really familiar to a lot of y'all, because that's what Europe is doing right now with frozen Russian assets to support Ukraine. So what the U.S. is going to do is that whatever Iran damages or destroys, they're just going to liquidate any seized Iranian assets that we hold or our allies hold to be able to get raw physical cash just to hand back to these Middle Eastern countries to pay for the damages and help them to rebuild from the Iranian attacks. So I don't think that's going to be doing anything to help out with diplomacy with Iran anytime soon, because now we're telling the Iranians that the money they want back so dearly is about to be liquidated and just given to their enemies in the region for them to rebuild from the Iranian attacks. Additionally, we also got to hear that there was apparently some sort of fire at the Shiraz Air Base today. It didn't appear to be that large, so we don't know what it was. And we also were able to hear that there was some sort of an incident that unfolded at Karg Island. According to what we were able to hear from some Iranian news outlets, which were Tasnim, moments ago explosion sounds were heard on Karg Island. These sounds were related to the neutralization of ammunition in the Baragon oil area, which was heard on the island. These explosions are controlled and there's no cause for concern. I don't believe the Iranians for a minute on this. Something happened, we don't know what, but apparently something blew up on Karg Island and they tried to explain it away as controlled detonations. of some sort on the southern area of the island. We've also been able to hear as well, additionally, that inside of Kuwait, the Kuwaitis have stated that the Iranian attack was a flagrant violation of the ceasefire. So the Kuwaitis are on board with the Iranians and saying that everything that happened yesterday was a clear violation of the ceasefire. And at the same time, we've also been able to see that the Iranians did put out videos of the missiles they fired at Kuwait yesterday. Here's the clips.
What the heck? What kind of missile was that? That looked like an unusual missile that Iran typically doesn't use. Is that the normal one or is that an unusual one?
That'd be one of them Godders, I believe.
I think isn't that a medium range?
I think so. Let me pull this up. Let's see. Iran missile ranges. Let me see.
I haven't really seen them using that one in the recent attacks. That seems to be one that's kind of unusual.
Let's see here. Oh no. This one's normal. This one's a little normal. I'll tell you what. I had to check. I actually got this right somehow, luckily, because I said I think that thing's a Goddard. It is a Goddard. This is the Goddard right here, which has a range of 1,900 kilometers, which is pretty long range to hit Kuwait.
Yeah,
I mean, they could have hit Kuwait.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying, man. They don't use that normally. Like that's a medium range ballistic, which is overkill to say the least against the Gulf states, because it's literally underusing its range to a large degree. So I don't know why they're doing that. It seems kind of weird.
It is a little bit weird, but then again, they did also use IRBMs that had almost 2,000 kilometer ranges against Israel, which was well within the range of, short range IRBMs. And we saw that back in the day, they were using Karam Shahar 4s and others like that to attack Israel. So I guess it's not out of the question for them to completely misuse resources like this. Maybe they have a lot of them, so they're fine with wasting them. But it is kind of interesting. I will have to admit that is really interesting. You're using an IRBM at SRBM ranges. That's really bizarre. But there's the
I guess the main thing that pops into my head is maybe the Iranians are short on the short range missiles. Like maybe they used up a whole bunch of those, and the ones that are readily accessible and easily able to be used are the medium range, because that doesn't make any sense at all to waste a medium range on such a close target.
Yeah, I would say it's just really weird. Like, it's a normal missile, by the way, folks. I do want to say the Goddard is a fairly normal one, but it is pretty irregular to see it used against such a short-range target. That is quite odd. And there goes a load of them, apparently. Oh, is it Syria?
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Man. Made me feel like we were back in Chad or Mali for a minute. like that one guy down there, remember him in Mali, man? He was like, we're getting gas. Allahu Akbar, put the truck. Allahu Akbar. It's like, calm down, man. Like one every 5 seconds, not one every second, please. But moving aside from that whole deal in Iran, we've also been able to see additionally that the Saudi Arabians also condemned the acts of Iranian aggression yesterday as well, along with the Kuwaitis. And we also saw, interesting enough, that an Iranian delegation might have flown into Riyadh today, because there was a couple of Iran Air aircraft that flew into Saudi Arabia. We're not entirely sure what's going on with that, but we'll be keeping an eye on it. In the meantime, outside of all that, we've also been able to hear that there were rocket attacks and drone attacks near Kiryat Shimona today, which are fairly regular news at this point. But a lot of people are wondering, what's going on with that quote-unquote controlled explosion that happened on Cog Island? What's up with that? And Matthew, what are people thinking? Are they thinking that it was a controlled explosion or that something suspicious is going on here? And what are you thinking about it as well?
Okay, so we did see the visual evidence that there was an explosion at the Shiraz Iranian Air Base, which is obviously in Shiraz, Iran. We did see that on the image earlier, but we also heard reports of explosions on Kar Island yet again today. We also heard those reports yesterday, but never got visual evidence of it, and we still don't have it. But we do have visual evidence of Shiraz getting hit at that air base. So what in your opinion is happening here? 55% said it sounds like U.S. airstrikes on Iran, while about 15% said it's probably just Iran air defense being mistaken for attacks, and 14% said it sounds like controlled explosions like the Iranians are claiming. So the Iranians are lying, by the way. The Iranians lie about these attacks all the time. They'll say that they're gas explosions or gas leaks, which is obviously lies. We'll also hear them say that's controlled explosions because, of course, right in the middle of a war, they like to go and demine all kinds of old explosives, which makes no sense at all. So I would say, to me, it sounds like covert U.S. airstrikes on Kharg Island. That's what it sounds like. We did get the report right before we went live that apparently Iran had launched another drone into the Strait of Hormuz, and I would imagine the U.S. probably responded by probably hitting Kharg Island and hitting Shiraz as well. So That's my guess. I think they're probably retaliation for what Iran's doing in the Strait of Hormuz, and the U.S. is going through a lot of effort to keep that quiet because they don't want to mess up the whole war powers situation that's going on right now in the Congress. So I'm with the 55%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'll be with 55% as well. It sounds like it's possible airstrikes on Iran to me as well by the United States, and they're just not being reported. So moving us on out of that poll, we've also been able to hear of some interesting developments today from Washington. Let me get y'all on into this news. This is that Israel news that we were talking about earlier. We have been able to hear that according to some information that came out today from the New York Times, recent U.S. intelligence reports have raised concerns about Israeli spy agencies eavesdropping on American negotiators working on a peace deal with Iran, amid rising concerns over a more general counterintelligence threat by Israel. The reports include concerns that Israel has stepped up its efforts to eavesdrop on senior American officials, including Witkoff and the president's top negotiator, Elbridge Colby, the Pentagon's top policy official, and one of the main deputies, Michael Domino. The new warning could potentially complicate efforts to further integrate military war planning between U.S. Central Command and Israel, especially if the Pentagon makes a decision to place new restrictions on information shared with Israeli officers. Generally, this is... go ahead.
I was just about to say, I could have sworn that the Israeli intelligence services were already classified as a critical threat. At least that's what I've heard from people that claim to be in the know. That's what they claim. But they're acting like this is a new thing. Also, by the way, this is also allegedly, of course, so take it as you will. The Israeli intelligence services are not allowed to go into, for example, the CIA building in Langley. They're not allowed to go in. If a U.S. intelligence officer or an official wants to meet with an Israeli intel asset, they have to go somewhere else. They don't let them in the building because they're a huge counterintelligence risk. I didn't think this was new, but they're acting like this is a brand new thing. I'll say this. I do believe that Israel does conduct a whole bunch of counterintelligence, probably to a degree that is probably crossing the line, to say the least, multiple times over. So I don't know. Like, maybe they're doing it. It sounds like they've apparently uncovered something really serious. Like maybe they were wiretapping some of these officials or something like that. It sounds like it's something pretty damn bad for this article to come out.
It sounds like it was pretty bad. And also, I gotta say, like, people are treating this like it's shocking. It's like, oh my god, the top security threat is acting like a top security threat. It's like, damn, it's like, wow, that's crazy. It's like, they're the top security threat for the reason. I mean, like, they're generally, from what we've both heard, Israel is considered a larger intelligence security threat to the United States than even communist China and Russia is, because of how generally malicious and pretty much, how would we say, persistent they are at their intelligence and counterintelligence operations on the United States. It's a little bit interesting to me, though, because a lot of people I see in the chat are like, dang, like, this is making me kind of getting a little bit worn out with the Israelis. I do have to say that for a lot of people in some parts of the government to say that Israel is a top ally, I haven't really heard of the British or the Germans or the Polish or the Japanese doing something similar to this, or even being alleged to do something similar to this in, I don't know, the entire history of our allyship with them over the decades. It's a little bit interesting to me on that, because I would say that, imagine folks, if you heard about the Chinese doing something like this, or a European country doing something like this. China's an enemy, Britain's an ally, just for example. If you heard that the Chinese were doing this, you go, oh, well, that's expected. They're an enemy of the United States. If Britain did something like this, and it was not this particular country, everybody would be going, oh my God, we need to cut all relations with them because this is absolutely ridiculous, and they may as well be adversarial if they're gathering counterintelligence like that.
It happens, though. The U.S. does this to everybody, by the way. The U.S. recently got caught in 2023. There was a whole bunch of documents that leaked out somehow. I'm not sure even how they got out, but the documents were showing that the U.S. was spying on South Korea very heavily, like literally spying on everybody. That's the top officials in the South Korean government. And it leaked out back in 2023. I think it was the later months, maybe in like November or something like that. And it caused a bit of a momentary rift with South Korea, but everybody got over it pretty quick. So this is not unusual. Like, every country spies on one another. Some people claim that the U.S. doesn't spy on Israel, but you better damn believe we spy on Israel. Like, the U.S. spies on literally everybody. And it's just what countries do. Counterintelligence is something that every intelligence service out there operates with. So Now, I will say this, though. There is a line that shouldn't be crossed. Like, for example, if Israel is wiretapping, like, for example, the president or something like that, that's a line that you probably don't want to cross because then you start having to question whether or not that's really the U.S.'s best ally at that point, at least in my opinion.
Well, I'd say this is a line that Israel's crossed that I'm not too happy with, because it's not really like Israel is a buddy-buddy with the United States. They also say they like their friendship with Russia, and they've also sold American military secrets to the Chinese, which is what led them to develop the J-10. So, I mean, like, with another country like Britain or another friendly country, like, say, Japan, it would be like, oh, well, everyone does this to everybody. But with the Israelis, you never know if they might take that information and might sell it to someone else, because they have done that in the past when we've given them proprietary technology, and then they just went and sold that willy-nilly to whoever they wanted to make a buck off of our own proprietary tech. So that's kind of why I'm saying, this is something that I don't really think is a good thing, because already given the fact that they have been known to kind of use information they gather from us or technology and just give it to other people like it's their own, like they have a final say on it. And that's what makes me think this isn't really a great thing, because who knows, they might be giving this information to the Chinese or the Russians, to get a little bit of fervor or favor with them, so that way then the Russians go and tell Iran. You never know.
Well, if the U.S. is going to crack down on Israeli spies, I mean, that's going to be a tough thing to do because I think Israel, because also, by the way, this is a weird thing, folks. The way it works, from what I've heard in the intel community, when you send an intelligence asset to a foreign country, you can actually declare that intel asset, like you declare that they're a spy, basically, when you send them to an embassy. So I think Israel has like 1 or 2 declared intel officers currently in the United States at the embassy, but there's a whole bunch of them that are not declared, that are more covert intelligence officers that are hanging out here in the United States. And that works like that for pretty much every country. So we don't truly know how many Israeli intelligence officers are actually operating freely in the United States. We don't know that information. It's obviously going to be kept secret. But, I have a feeling that if people knew probably how many were hanging out of every country, including Israel, they'd probably be a little bit scared about how many are hanging out here, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I would have a feeling so. I'd have a feeling that definitely would be the case. But moving us on out of that whole news, because, that's just an interesting tidbit, folks. It's time for us to move on out of Washington and back into Ukraine to cover the remainder of the war that we have not covered yet. So moving us on into the areas of the occupied regions. The drone attacks are still ongoing right now, and they're going deep into Russia. We haven't been able to get the impacts yet out of these attacks, but we'll hopefully have those for tomorrow's stream. We also get to see the fire at the Ust-Lubinsk area is continuing to rage over the day. It is a roaring inferno in the middle of the city right next to the rail yard. And additionally, we also were able to hear as well some more interesting news of the deep strikes behind the lines. There was a strike today. Everyone get your tears and napkins ready at a rail yard in Luhansk. They blew this thing to smithereens. This is a substation nearby to the rail yard. This was on fire.
Это подстанцию въебали, блядь, у нас. Это пиздец.
Almost been a train spotter filming. They were very upset. I like the Ukrainians much more now.
Man, I mean, I guess, but you can also see this thing.
Someone's got the chainsaw out.
Oh, it's a drone, bled. That thing actually sounds like a chainsaw. I think it. Oh!
Damn. Well, whether or not it's a chainsaw or not, we'll never know, but it basically did the same thing as a chainsaw. It burned it down.
So from what we know, the rail yard that was actually hit is visible in Luhansk City. It's this one around right here somewhere. So this is the one that we believe got hit, or at least a nearby area that got hit. I didn't get to find the electrical substation nearby, unfortunately. Hopefully I'll be able to find that here in the near future. But this is definitely the location that got hit as far as the rail yard is concerned. So really interesting to see. It does show us that railway logistics are going to be slowed down a little bit because of this attack. We don't know by how much, and we also don't really know exactly what they hit yet in the rail yard. There's a lot of different things they could hit, and depending on what it was, that could also have a greater or lesser effect on the decrease of efficiency there at that rail yard. But moving us on out of that bit of news, we also were able to hear in the location unknowns today of this neat little picture of the Ukrainians firing an actually, yeah, that's an R-73. They fired an R-73 at a Shahed, and we got this one still image here of the R-73 right in front of the HUD as it was making its way to the drone. That was a pretty cool picture.
That was pretty cool. I don't know if I'd want to see a missile right in front of my view screen like that, though.
Oh, I wouldn't worry about it. At least it's going the right way. We also got to see the Russian casualty report over the past 24 hours. And holy moly!
Oh, whoa! They got 3 Bobcats. They say 3 for me, 3 for me. That's what they say right there. A brand new term, number 3. I've never heard that one before. Brand new term. But tell us some more about this right here. Tell us what happened to those Ruskies.
And according to Miss D, keeper of the records, she stated that 358 supply trucks is the 11th highest daily loss, 82 artillery systems is the 15th highest, and 9 ground robotic complexes is tied at the 7th highest, and there was a nice increase in MLRSs and APCs. And over the course of the past 24 hours, 1,380 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 12 APCs, 358 supply trucks, 3 main battle tanks, 82 artillery pieces, 2,046 drones, 5 MLRSs, 1 anti-aircraft warfare system, and 3 Bobcat skid steers. All in all, not a bad day, and a pretty nice thing to see. They're blasting him away. Left and right, I tell yous. Left and right. Moving us on up and into the Belgrade area behind Vovchansk, we also get to see the Ukrainian border guards making sure to take out some additional Russian support equipment that is trying to help out the failing Russian offensive in the town of Vovchansk, bleed.
Also, by the way, I saw Flamehawk say, what's the reason why there's been so many Bobcat losses over the last week? We're not totally sure, but I think the reason why it could be is because Ukraine's hitting so much of the rear line logistics, and that's generally where most of the special equipment's hanging out, is in the rear lines. So the Ukrainians are probably just simply hitting it as they see it along the highways and places like that. So that's why I assume why.
That's generally what we are believing. That is definitely correct, folks. That's why we think the losses keep staying consistent, is the highway attacks. We also see them knocking out an artillery piece right here. A D-30, I believe. And also another Russian occupier. We can also see them hitting a motorcycle, which is really a dirt bike. And that's the end of the clip. But moving us on out of that footage right there in the Belgrade area, we also get to see a lot out of the Slavyansk area, or the Severonsky Forest, as we call it here on the show. We were able to see the 81st Air Mobile Group was continuing to use their drone forces to strike Russian dirt bikes and other Russian equipment within the front. Here goes one of the dirt bikes right now. Here goes another dirt bike right here. And perhaps a third one. Third time's the charm. Maybe a fourth
This is like toothpick forest right here. I'm like, can we even call this a forest anymore? It's like there's no leaves on anything.
I like to call it the toothpick farm. It's where they grow the toothpicks.
Honestly, really, that's facts.
Encore. We also got to see the 45th Artillery taking out a couple of Russian soldiers as well. Here they are. They're wandering around and into their positions in the tree line. But the drone has spotted them, and this spells doom for this Russian group. And so the artillery comes in thick, taking him on out. You see this guy trying to make a run for it, but he ended up getting dialed in.
This guy is locked in.
This guy is buried under. Like that. That's what's going on with these fellas. But that's the end of the clip.
I tell you what, it's not a good time on the front lines. I tell you, now they're getting hungry. Now they're not getting gasoline to fuel the equipment. I mean, it's just getting rougher and rougher each and every day. It's almost like it'd be easier to go home and forget about the whole thing.
You know, folks, it's such a tragedy. It really makes you want to weep about these Russian soldiers getting hit by these drones every day. So brutal. I mean, if only they would desert, or for example, surrender or go home or mutiny, maybe they wouldn't have to deal with this. But sadly, folks, their hands are tied. They have to fight for Russia. It's not like they have every other option in the book to try and not fight for Russia. So what a tragedy.
You know what's interesting as well? You know the Pavlov theory, like the Pavlov effect. That was actually a Russian psychologist, I think, or a physiologist, one or the other, Ivan Pavlov, back in the late 1800s. He came up with the Pavlov effect, which basically was, if you expose something like a creature to negative stimuli, then naturally they're going to probably stop whatever that activity is. A real simple concept. If you give a creature pain, they'll probably stop whatever activity they were doing when they received the pain. That's the general concept. I think Pavlov's teachings, those Russian teachings, have fallen on deaf ears with the Russian military. They're getting a whole bunch of pain, but they're not stopping.
I thought that was the whole thing that occurred with the bell, where he'd like ring the bell before he fed them, and he started to observe that they would salivate even in the absence of food if the bell was rung, because they attributed the bell to the food. I thought that was that theory.
I think it's technically called classical conditioning. I think that's what's really called in the whole like field of psychology and stuff like that. But generally though, it's a stimuli causes a change of behavior. That's what it is at its root. So you know the most common effect is like if you're exposed to pain, like that's how people break habits. They'll use the Pavlov effect to break habits like that using pain to snap themselves out of it. But yeah, same concept.
Huh, interesting. Man, like honestly though, that classical conditioning like term sounds very corporate. Like, you know, it's like that's something like the CIA would say. It's like, all right, now that we've got Abdul al-Salim here, who's the right-hand man of Al-Qaeda, it's time to conduct some classical conditioning. Like I'm send him to Guantanamo. Man. Like,
Oh man, I guess the pain has to hit the decision maker instead of the troops. Like I guess it doesn't matter if the Russian troops are suffering because you know they're not the ones that get to make the call to leave or not. But if the pain like Ukraine's doing arrives in Moscow, maybe it'll start to take effect.
Yeah, maybe so. We also got to see that the Ukrainians were trying to get some war reporters in today into Konstantinivka. The 44th Mechanized Brigade was the one charged with the responsibility of their safety, getting them into the city. And we got to see what unfolded as they were trying to get into the city here in this clip. And there's drones circling around them everywhere. And they're trying to shoot them down as effectively as they can, flying through the drone nets and dismounting the trucks to try and shoot down the drones before they can get to the reporters.
Listen to that supersonic crack.
They were able to take out that one, and now they're on the way into the city by foot. We hear them continuing to shoot down the drones. And now it looks like they made it into the city of Konstantinivka. But that's the end of that clip and showing you all the wild ride into Konstantinivka by those reporters in the 44th Brigade. We also get to see on the front, in the meantime, that the National Police were continuing to take care of business. Crazily enough, the 44th Mechanized Brigade, an actual unit of the Army, were the ones bringing the reporters in. The police are the ones that actually were fighting the Russians today on film. Kind of a little bit of a wild reversal here, but still, the National Police of Ukraine do a pretty damn good job at fighting the Russians.
I don't think the Ukrainian police are ever trained in de-escalation tactics. I feel like they're just escalating.
Man, bro, I feel like the Ukrainian police, like when they pull someone over, they'd be like, okay, we pulled you over for drunk driving. Man, you're a pig. Oh, yeah? Well, you're a bitch. Bro, like, they just, like, start escalating it. Like, man, I think that's probably what they did. Like, because, you know, they don't de-escalate in the conflict at all. I haven't really ever seen the National Police ever give anyone even the chance to surrender. Like, if they don't surrender off the bat, they're like, all right, we're getting them.
Yeah, I would say, man, they just got them just then. They just literally dropped something on their whole... Whoa, what the hell? What's going on down there?
Business. They're taking care of it.
Business as usual, damn.
You see them here continuing to watch the Russians in the trees, believe. Get him! Oh, and he just sees that he's about to get head, and he got head. And this guy, he got the jump on him. Didn't really appear that he stood a chance. But the Ukrainian police, they're still out there working hard. They ain't playing. We also got to see another clip from the Konstantinivka front of the 39th Separate Unmanned Systems Battalion, also attacking Russian forces. This is actually a unit of the Autonomous Drone Forces, which is a new branch of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. So this unit is entirely based around drone warfare. They're not even a mechanized brigade or an armored brigade or a motorized brigade like all the other units we see using drones. This one was purpose-built and made to use drones only. It's really crazy, folks, to think that in the modern day, there are entire branches of the military in Ukraine that are just dedicated to drone warfare only and nothing else.
Really, I'm surprised that most of their military just isn't purely drone units like this, considering that's pretty much all the casualties on the Russian side are caused by this type of warfare at this point.
You know, I would say the U.S. really needs to find a branch to specialize in this specifically, or they need to create a department of the Army that works on this sort of operation solely.
They have it. They actually have a unit. I can't remember the name of it. hell, this dude is just like a random dude, rando with a T-shirt on out here taking drones off. The hell's that? But I think they have an Army unit that they've actually given pretty much autonomy to a large degree to start experimenting around with those drones. But that's the problem, though. They're not like fielding the drones. They're simply experimenting with it. They're trying to find a way to use consumer tech and convert it into military-style drones to attack on the front line like this. So unfortunately, the U.S. is still pretty far behind on this type of stuff. They're not exactly to the operational level yet.
Isn't that the 2nd Cav Regiment in Vilsec that's doing that?
I think they're based out of Vilsec. Yeah, I think they were doing like some exercises in like I think it might have been Poland or something like that if I recall correctly.
But what I'm
No. They had gone down to somewhere in AFRICOM actually to go and test that stuff. There was a Vice documentary I watched on that about a week ago where they had that unit working on it. They have a whole bunch of people our age in the 20s to 30 range working on that stuff, because I guess they assume that young people will adapt to it quicker. But the catch is, though, they just have like normal run of the mill, like, low level officers working on it to a large degree.
Well, what I'm saying, though, because that's taking a Cav regiment, and that's why I'm like saying like purpose-made unit. It's this one right here, actually, because it is the Striker regiment that's doing it. Like, I'm not saying like take a current existing regiment and try and make them figure out drones. I'm saying create a whole new department of the Army to work on drones only, and to raise brigades that are entirely based on drone warfare and operate them like artillery brigades. Basically, that's what I'm arguing for.
Yeah, that would be a good idea. It's just that the U.S. doesn't understand yet. I don't know why they don't understand it, because the stats are right in front of our faces to look at. But if 90% of the Russian casualties are being conducted by FPV drone attacks, then that should be a pretty significant clue. But the U.S. doesn't see FPV drone warfare, at least right now at this very moment. They don't see it as a primary method of war. They see it as a supplement to the normal ground troops, which is about, I don't know, a couple of years behind where the Ukrainians are at this point. They learned that lesson a long time ago.
It's that old kind of thinking like people had going into World War II. Everyone in World War II that was in charge in the Allies, they were like the French. They were like, oh well, it's going to be a trench war. It's like, no, it's not going to be a trench war. It's like war has evolved a lot since World War I, and then that's why they lost so quickly in France, is because France was ready to slog it out in the fields of France for the next 4 years, and then Germany broke through and defeated them in a month, and that was the problem.
Yeah, I was. Oh, go ahead. I thought you were finished.
To round this out here, that's generally why I would say that we need to start evolving now, because we don't want to find out a lesson in a sour way once we get in a war and find out that drones are the war now. We want to be ready for that before it comes around. If we're wrong, then we're fine. We can still fight a conventional war, and now we got all of these drone forces to support the conventional forces. But if we don't evolve, then we have the conventional forces getting slammed, and we have no counter or defenses to it to speak of.
Yeah, and the crazy part is the second lieutenant that was talking on the Vice documentary was actually mentioning the point that we keep bringing up over and over and over again. He was saying that the main choke point of a drone war is simply production. So we have to be able to ramp it up quickly and also decrease production when it's not needed, but we have to be very flexible with how much we're producing at any given time. He was even saying that too, and he's a second lieutenant in the Army. So it's like, if they're saying that, it sounds like the top command is still not listening to that advice. They're still not listening to their own officers. They're not listening to civilian analysts. I don't understand why they're not picking up on that. Maybe there's just not enough commercial support for it right now or something. But we got to stop being so rigid here in the United States, because that's not going to win the next war.
It's complacency. It's the idea that it worked, like this doctrine worked in my day, so we don't need to evolve. This is a trend. It's a fad. It only works in Ukraine. Because the Ukrainians and the Russians, they're lessers, so they're they're stupid beyond belief or whatnot, and so it works there, but it wouldn't work anywhere else. That's the logic behind it, because that's how most militaries get defeated. Like, if you ever look at any sort of an evolution in war, they'll always say something like, oh well, like for World War I, oh, the machine gun really won't change much of anything. I mean, it's not that big of a thing. We can still fight in the open fields for the larger part and maneuver as larger armies. That'll be fine. We'll do great. And then they go out there and the machine gun starts mowing people down left and right, to the point that it's completely changed the war, and you can't just stand in the wide open or a machine gun's going to mow you down. So then you have to get in the trenches. And they had to learn that lesson brutally in the First World War, and then didn't learn it for the first 2 years of the conflict on either side, because whenever they conduct an offensive, they go, okay, well, let's just, shell them a little bit on the other side, and then we're going to get everyone up, and they're just going to run across no man's land and hope for the best. And they'd still get mowed down by the machine guns. And that's what we're going to be getting into here in the modern day of, oh, well, these drones, they're not that big of a deal. It's not even that big of a threat. It's just a little fad thing. It's not going to be, long lasting. It's not going to have any effect. We're going to get into war, and drones are going to start cutting people down like machine guns used to cut people down in the First World War. And then we're going to learn the hard way. And I generally am more of a fan of not learning the hard way, considering that we've watched plenty of other people, the Russians in particular, learn the hard way that drones are changing how wars are fought. We don't want to be in a position like Russia in the future, where we're having to learn that lesson in the midst of an active war, and also getting folded like laundry by a force that's using them. I mean, Iran already showed in the war in the Middle East, they hardly even use drones to the level that Ukraine's using them, and they already showed that those are easily overwhelming the defenses and offensives that we have right now, and it's an Achilles heel, and we ought to be learning from that rapidly, and rapidly pushing to implement drone offensive and defensive forces at every level, in every branch, in every department of our armed forces.
Yeah, and also like Octavian's saying in the live chat, I saw several people say this. They said maybe the U.S. arms industry has interest in keeping the status quo. And it's not necessarily about keeping the status quo. It's about being greedy and making as much money as possible. That's the problem. That's why the U.S. Like industrial complex for the military is generally staying static, in my opinion, is because if you give an executive of one of these corporations the option to make a high margin profit missile or to make a low margin, disposable FPV drone, naturally greed's going to win out, and they're going to want to make that huge missile that makes a huge bunch of margin and profit. So that's why I think they're not transitioning to FPV and also building out the infrastructure to do that. It's pure greed. They're not really concerned about the U.S. winning the next war. They're worried about filling their pockets.
Well, I mean, there's other companies though, like Anduril and whatnot, that are filling in that gap and trying to get into some limited level of mass production, or at least a decent amount of companies that are trying. So I would say, to a degree for the legacy companies, that's definitely true. But there are people out there trying to fill in the gaps, to at least. But even then, like them, quote unquote, filling in the gaps, their drones are still wildly expensive compared to their counterparts in Ukraine. Like an Anduril drone can cost in the tens of thousands of dollars. The Ukrainian equivalent of that drone costs either thousands of dollars or hundreds of dollars.
Yeah, it's just that people. It's honestly a little bit aggravating. I mean, when you see it in so many different industries in America, it's like that greed's going to destroy us as a country if people don't stop being so greedy on stuff like that. It's like just because you could possibly make $1 billion versus making 500 million, it's like in the long run you could make 500 million and be comfortable and set as a company and still making profits for your shareholders and also still looking out for the interests of the company instead of trying to get that extra 500 million just so that way you can stuff your pockets now versus later. It's like, it's across every industry. It's in the healthcare industry. It's in the military industry. It's in literally everything nowadays. So hopefully, eventually necessity will force them to change, but I wish they would change before then.
Yeah, I mean, well, back in the day, we used to be pretty innovational. The U.S. was the one generally coming up with most innovations. And that's why those legacy defense companies did so well, and they're in the position they are today, is because they would always be going, like, how in the world do you hit a bridge, like, with a pinpoint target with a bomb? Like, how in the world do we make a bomb to do that? And then they came up with guided munitions. And then they said, how in the world do we make something that can hit an aircraft at 30,000 feet or 50,000 feet going Mach 2? How in the world can we make a missile to hit that? And then they came up with more advanced missile systems. Nowadays, instead of doing any of that, trying to innovate in a war, like, for example, developing missiles, which ended up being a huge moneymaker for companies like Boeing, because Boeing produced a good amount on the missiles back in the earlier days, and also everything else. Instead of doing that with drones, they're now like, you know what? These bigger Tomahawks, they make a lot of money, so we're not going to, even try and get into the drone sphere. It just doesn't really make enough money for us, for our shareholders, and blah, blah, blah. So we're just going to keep trying to push the Tomahawks and have our lobbyists keep pushing for people to keep passing acts on current conventional weapons production and not shift any money whatsoever into drones or any research and development into it, which is going to be a death knell for our military when we get involved in another conflict, because Iran already was a close one. I mean, they started to overrun air defenses everywhere. They overran Israeli air defenses after the first week. They were hitting anything they wanted in Israel afterwards, and the Israelis were hardly able to do anything about it. They overran all the U.S. air defenses in the region within the first few days. We were seeing that battery radars were getting knocked out pretty regularly. I think we had 3 of them in the region and 2 of them got knocked out. So basically all of our THAAD interceptors were out of operation in the first opening days of the fight. The Patriots got overwhelmed. All of our allies' air defenses got overwhelmed because it's working on yesteryear's tactics and yesteryear's technology where drones didn't exist. And threats from the air were limited in number. It was either a limited number of cruise missiles or ballistic missiles and aircraft, or there was nothing in the air at all, and you could deal with a lower density air campaign. Now we're dealing with hundreds of drones, and also dozens of missiles in the air all at the same time, and a missile-based interceptor system just can't deal with all of that, and it's not even efficient to deal with them in that manner, because the missiles that are intercepting the incoming threats are so expensive, it becomes cost prohibitive to try and pursue that sort of a path.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Absolutely. That's why we need to see that our armed forces innovate, people. That's the only way we're going to survive is innovation. But moving us on out of that, we have been able to see on the Novopavlivka front, moving us past Pokrovsk, that the 42nd Mechanized Brigade has also been hitting Russian forces quite heavily in this area as well. Take a look. They're taking it nice and easy. Oh, not anymore. A boom, Bliet. And now it's cooking. Oh. Oh. That thing's boiling. Call that thing an oven because they cooking. But moving us on out of that bit of news, it is now time for us to get on and into the rest of the questions for the night, because we've actually rounded out the news segment. Unfortunately, we do not have a speech from Zelensky tonight. I know, many will weep, and I do as well, because Zelensky's speeches are usually pretty good. Usually, sometimes they even go hard. But nevertheless, we will be getting on into the question segment and getting through all of the questions, starting with our super chats first and then getting into our live chats a little bit later on. But I do have to say a humongous thanks to everybody who has been watching the show so far tonight, because we are entirely honored and greatly appreciative to know that 14,000 of y'all are still here right now, and at the peak tonight, we had 17.3 thousand people watching. It is an absolute honor and a privilege for both Matthew and me to be able to cover this news to every single one of y'all. We have never seen numbers like this before on the channel historically as a norm, and yet these days we're seeing that people in the tens of thousands come here every single night, and also in the millions watch this channel every month for their news. And I hope that every single day we are able to do honor by y'all by making sure to provide the highest quality news, the best quality analysis we can, and also trying to give some explanations for what we're seeing and why they're happening around the world each and every day in support of American and Western interests. And with that in mind, it is time for us to get the chit-chat with each and every one of yous, all of yous. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so moving into our final question segment of the night, it's time to get our super chats, live chats, and Morse code decoders of the stream. But jumping right into our super chat segment, we have one from none other than GMR13, who put in a $40 support. And thank you very much, GMR, for supporting the channel. I think that might be one of your first ever supports on the channel, and we do appreciate that. They said $1 a month back pay for every month I've been watching and not yet thrown in. And also check out Moab, Utah, the Arches National Park. I moved there from Virginia, and it's a must visit for us transplants. Honestly, I've been wanting to see Moab for a while. Like that's the outdoor like off-roading heaven for people with like off-road Jeeps and Toyotas and stuff like that. It's really cool. Sadly, I don't really have a vehicle that can really go out there to Moab that much to really take advantage of the place. But I would like to see the town though. Also, I think there's a new train that's going through there, like through Utah. It's like some luxury train. It's like wildly expensive, but it goes through Moab or at least close to it or something. That goes through that area, if I'm not mistaken. But a very beautiful place. I'd love to see it sometime when we eventually get the time to see it. But sadly, with the stream, it's hard to go that far out because we'll probably miss something. But Enforcer, what say you?
This thing's a city, T?
Yeah. Look at that. Right there. I've been wanting to see that. They call it Missile City, like the Iranians have.
Damn, T, how do people live in there? I'm just, all jokes aside, the Moab doesn't even have anything to do with Moab, Utah. It just has the same name, weirdly enough. But Moab, Utah is a place I'd like to go as well. Actually, what you're talking about, Matthew, I think that thing is called the Rocky Mountaineer or the Canyon Spirit. And it goes
Canyon Spirit, that's it.
Yeah, it's Canyon Spirit. They stop the train, I think, up here at like Thomas Springs or Crescent, and then they put you on a bus, and then they bring you down to Moab, and they also book you a hotel in Moab, or you sleep for the night, and then you get up the next day, and they bus you back out to the train, and then you get back on the train to take the daytime trip through the Rockies to Colorado, I believe. So it's a really cool trip. Like it's extremely expensive. It's like $5,000 a ticket, so completely unaffordable. Oh man, like
that's a little too much. I don't think I'd pay $5,000 for any vacation, much less on a train. But that's a little crazy. You can just take Amtrak. Not that I like Amtrak, but you could just like if you really just wanted to go on a train, it's like you could take Amtrak for like a fraction of the cost.
But Matthew, this just isn't any train. It's the Canyon Spirit. It's the most luxurious train in the United States of America.
At the end of the day, you get from point A to B. You can either get there a lot, possibly richer or a lot poorer, depending on which one you take. I'd rather arrive a little bit richer than poorer.
Matthew ain't one of them to shell out that cash. But honestly, I'd have to say, folks, I wouldn't be one to shell out that kind of cash either. It's just way beyond our income range, like $5,000 for a train. And I mean, you're only on it for 2 days, so that's like $2,500 a day. So that then breaks down into about $1,000 an hour. That's unbelievable. I mean, like, that's insane when you start bringing down the figures there. It's just an unrealistic sort of a number. But it is a really cool trip. From what I've heard, a lot of people have raving reviews for the Canyon Spirit. But, I mean, if I was doing it, folks, I would just take the Amtrak California Zephyr through there, because it literally takes the exact same route. And you basically see the same things. If you get a roomette or a bedroom on one of the superliners on Amtrak, especially one of the new refurbished ones, that may as well be like being on the Canyon Spirit. On the Canyon Spirit, you don't even get a private room. You're just in a chair, so it's like coach class, but high class coach class. It's like, honestly,
But they serve you cheese and wine. So I can go buy that from Walmart for like $15 instead of paying $5,000. I'll just bring it on the. I bet Amtrak will let you probably bring it on the train. How they operate, they let anything go on Amtrak.
Shit,
like
man.
You can go on there. You can go hang out. You go on that observation car at night. It's a scary place. Like they let anything go on that train. Like just go to Walmart, pick yourself up some of that cheap wine, and get the whole bottle instead of just a glass of it for $5,000.
Man, they serve cheese and wine on that train. Shit, man, I wouldn't be cheesed to spend that kind of money to get on it, and I'd be whining the whole time. like I already got that for free at that point with the fare. I would love to take the California Zephyr though, because let me go on Amtrak and show you all the comparison in cost for this here real quick. So let me go to Amtrak, which is improving these days. So let me see here. They're going to be changing out all those superliners, so y'all better ride them while they're still around if you want to tell like your kids or grandkids one day, I was on the superliner, like for some reason. But let's see. We want to go from Salt Lake City to, let's see here, to Denver, Colorado. And we want to depart, let's see, we'll just go with like the 20th, and our return date will be, let's see here. We'll say like the next week, like on the same Saturday. So let's find the train. So it's round trip, remember everybody. So here is the price difference. The Canyon Spirit for the same trip is about a $5,000 ticket. The Amtrak train in coach is $118. If you wanted a private room, it's $600.
Yeah, you definitely got to take Amtrak. I've never understood people spending so much. Like, fair enough, if it's something you've wanted to do for a long time, it's like a once in a lifetime thing. Like, maybe I could see it being justified, but it's like, if it's getting you from one place to another, it's like, how many hours are you going to spend on the train? How many hours is it on this trip?
This would be a 16-hour one-way trip, but this is also a two-way ticket, so this is also the return trip.
Yeah, it's like, is it really worth that much an hour to sit in a train car? It's a little bit nicer than the Amtrak. Probably not. I'd rather have the money and keep it in savings or something like that than spend it all on the one train experience. Like, I just don't see it being worth it.
I would see it being worth it. I mean, the train goes places the cars don't on this trip.
No, I'm saying between that expensive train to this Amtrak.
Oh, I thought you meant like, in general. I mean, like, well, yeah, obviously I would agree. Like to me, the Canyon Spirit isn't worth it, for that price. It's like 10 times the price, and you basically get kind of like the same experience out of the whole deal. It's like maybe the people who are serving you are like a little bit friendlier, but that's about it. I mean, like if you get on a refurbished superliner, let me go pull that up. So a refurbished superliner.
Yeah, give Carabos 3 a picture of that Amtrak private room he's asking for. Let the people see what you get these days.
So this is the refurbished Superliner car that you get a private room. This is actually called a roomette. They have some different sizes. There's the roomette, the bedroom, and then there's also the handicap rooms on the bottom of the Superliners, which are huge. I mean, like, y'all ought to see those. Those things are massive. But that's what they look like new, refitted from their old upholstery to what they are today. And that's also a bedroom right there. So you get a huge amount of room for that.
Yeah, it's not super nice, but I mean, you're getting what you pay for. At least you're not spending $5,000 on this.
Well, I mean, like, it's not bad though. I mean, like, this is pretty nice. Like, the seats are wide and comfy. The window's huge. Like, it's generally clean, at least at the start of the trip, like, until it gets a whole bunch of dirt on it. Like, because the dirt gets kicked up from the train because it can get up to like 80 in some places. But honestly, though, folks, I would say it was a pretty fun time. I had a great time on the Coast Starlight. I would definitely do another ride on another train again. And the one I want to do, and this is really lucky to be in Salt Lake, I want to do the California Zephyr from Salt Lake to Denver and then the return trip as well. That would be a really cool trip to me. Like, I think that would be really neat and a fun thing to do. And also on top of that, like, a train is a vibe that you can't get anywhere else. You get to meet random people, like, and usually they have like very interesting stories, or they're just interesting characters that you can like remember and bring up for the rest of your life. Like, with anyone who was with you on the trip, you can be like, you remember that one person who like sat at the dining table and didn't say shit the whole time, and it was like, you know, like, you bring that up and have like a story to say. Or you could be like, you remember those cool people that you met, you know, when you were at like the dining car or the observation car. And, you know, the dining cars look really nice too. That's what the refurbished dining cars look like now.
Yeah, I don't like that forced socializing type deal. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna try to pretend like I do. I don't like it. Like having to just sit at a random table. I'm like, first of all, I don't like having to eat that close to other people, like literally in their face like that. That I don't even know. I'm like a little bit too close. I think they let you eat in your room though. Although that seemed kind of a little bit lame. I will say the one time we went on the trip, but I don't know. Like it's neat. I just don't the train.
Be pleased. He's like, I don't want to be around people and socializing in the dining car, but I also don't want to eat in my room. What do you want? Starving?
No, like I like for example, I'll talk to people on the plane. The last time I flew out here to Salt Lake City on my own, I was talking to people on the plane on the way here and back. But I just don't like being put this close, like being forced to like socialize like this. Like you have no choice to, like, and you also have to eat this close to other people. I'm just not a huge fan. It makes me feel like I'm back in high school again or something.
Honestly, I thought it was cool because, I mean, like, everyone I ran into on the train was really neat. Like, I met like a Vietnam War veteran, a lumberjack. Like, literally, well, this was a crazy one. I met a lumberjack on the train during breakfast, and we were in Oregon by that point. He was like, yeah, you know, like, my lumber camp that I live in basically is just outside of like Eugene or something like that. And once I get there, you know, I'm gonna get picked up by my company and I go back into the forest and I go cutting logs. I'm just coming back from seeing my family. And it was like really cool because you get to ask this guy about like, what is it like being a lumberjack in like the middle of nowhere in Oregon, you know? And he's like telling interesting stories and stuff. Like, you know, one time there was this thing in the woods that was nearby. We think it was a bear. We were like terrified because it was right outside of like the workers' shack that we were in. And I was like, that's really interesting. Like, you get to meet a lot of interesting people on the train. There was like some lady that was going to Vancouver, just north of Portland, to apparently give some sort of a speech at a conference about increasing mass transportation on the West Coast. It was like interesting stuff. Like, I thought it was really cool. Like, the people that I met on the train, I was like, that's just really neat. You know, you get to think about that and be like, you know, there's interesting people you met on the train and really good scenery, and the food was pretty decent too, you know, and the rooms were nice. I didn't really have much to complain about. I thought it was an adventure, really.
Yeah, it was interesting. I will say the food was pretty decent. Looking back at it, the little Amtrak steak that they gave you was pretty decent. But yeah, I just remember it went downhill for me after the dining car experience. I remember I ate in there. I was like, oh, this food's actually pretty good for like Amtrak, better than I was expecting. And then I made a mistake of having one glass of wine on the train. I don't know why I did that. I think it was free. I think that's why I had it. I don't usually drink. So it was free, so I had it. That was a big mistake because I don't usually drink, so that did a number on me. So by the time I went back to the room, I was already feeling a little bit motion sick, and that wine didn't do any better. So I got on top of that bunk in that little cramped little room, and it was all over for me. Like, it was all over. I remember from there, it went downhill bad. I woke up and I was sweating. I was in deep trouble.
I had a rum and coke, folks, and I went to sleep, and I did not wake up until we were at Mount Shasta, and I went to bed right outside of San Jose. I hate that the train passed through that area at night because I was really interested in kind of knowing what like the San Francisco Bay Area and San Jose and everything looked like out of the window, but it was dark by the time we even got to San Jose. So I went to sleep somewhere like in between San Jose and Fremont, and I went out. Like, I did not wake up once. I slept like a baby on that train. Well, actually, no, I did wake up once, and it was pretty cool because you could actually see the lights. I'm guessing it was like the lights of San Francisco or something else out here. I'm not really sure, but it was definitely over a body of water because you could see the lights reflecting on some water in the distance. It was pitch black out there, though. There was like no light near the train, and I was like, "Oh my god!" I was like, "I think that's San Francisco." I was like, "Wow, that's crazy!" And then like I passed back out right after that, and I woke up all the way up there, like up in North California. It was like 7 hours later.
Meanwhile, I was stumbling through the train cars in the dead of night, pitch black in the train cars, stumbling my way to the very front, trying to get to the observation cars. I was like, maybe if I can get by a big window, maybe I'll save the situation. I stumbled into the car, and I stumbled into a horror scene. There was people laying upside down in the chairs in the observation car, and there was alcohol bottles all over the floor, and the people were in there doing things. I'm not even sure what they were doing, but I couldn't care less. I'm like, I don't care if you're up here doing drugs or something like that. Just get out of my way. I stepped over to people, and I got in my chair, and I fit in probably perfectly by the look of my face. Because I looked like I was possibly high on something, but I wasn't high on anything. I was just basically dying. That was all.
And let me see here. I want to pull up. Where did the CoStar like go near San Francisco? So someone just said it doesn't go over the Golden Gate. Well, duh. I mean, the Golden Gate isn't a railroad bridge. Like, I was like, what kind of obvious statement was that? I was like, bro, obviously it doesn't go over the Golden Gate Bridge. It didn't even go through San Francisco City. It went on the other side of the bay. It went over here. If y'all are wondering where it was. It was around the Oakland area in Emeryville, and somewhere around here you could see the water. And let me see here. Is the train station around here? Because there's a lot of tracks here. Maybe it is. Oh, yeah, here it is, actually. Because the train stopped here somewhere, and then it went on. And I must have woken up somewhere around this giant intermodal cargo port in Oakland. Because I remember the train tracks were right on the coast somewhere of this, probably right here, actually, because this is a straight shot to the water. And you could see San Francisco out there in the distance, like the lights and all. And I thought that was just super neat. I actually never checked to see if that really was San Francisco, but it looks like it was. And I remember I was just blown away by that. I was like, oh my God. I was like, you can see San Francisco at night from this train. I was like, I didn't even imagine. I thought it'd be in the midst of buildings, like in like the suburbs and stuff around here, and you wouldn't see anything. But you could see the city lights of San Francisco, so I thought that was cool. And then in the morning when you wake up, you're waking up under Mount Shasta, and the sun starts rising, and there's like this orange glow all over this giant mountain right here, which is Mount Shasta. Here's a picture of it so that we all know what we were looking at. And you see that out the window of your train, like when you're waking up in the morning. That is, like, I gotta say, folks, the experience to me on the train, what really felt adventurous, it was really neat, it was enjoyable, to me it was comfortable, and I had a blast. I'm a fairly sociable person. I just like meeting random people and like hearing a little bit about them and their stories and stuff, because I just think it's neat. So I had a blast on the train. Like, it was exactly what I was looking for and thought it was going to be, and so that's why I'm still a huge fan of the trains. Matthew was kind of warming up to him before he went on that trip, and then I think he completely retreated from trains after the trip. So
oh yeah,
different experiences.
I only do momentary, like, hour-long trips on a train, like for local transit or something. I don't do those overnight trains. Like, I absolutely do not. The moment I stepped off that train in Washington and Seattle was like I felt like one of those people that got locked up abroad, like in a foreign country like Saudi Arabia or something like that, and they finally got let loose and they were innocent the entire time, and they're like, oh my God, freedom. I was like, that's the way I felt when I got out of Seattle. I was just like, I could have been kissing that nasty ground. I was just happy as hell to get off that train. I was like, that was like literally torture for me. It was like, how long was that train ride again?
It was 36 hours nonstop.
Yeah, it was like, I felt like I was in Guantanamo for 36 hours. I felt like I was being waterboarded the entire time. Like, that train ride was not enjoyable for me at all. Like, that was rough. Like, mainly the motion sickness, the nighttime situation. Like, that was like, I'm not even saying that to exaggerate. I was in the hell in that trip.
Man, but you were having a blast that first day, though, because you were also like, whoa, look at the views. Look at the scenery.
Oh, yeah.
Like, and then you went to sleep.
I was doing good.
Like, and he died. Like,
I was doing good the first few hours, but after those first few hours, I was screwed.
Dude, you were doing fine the whole first day until you went to sleep. Like, you were in the dining car eating the steak with us all, and you're like, oh, this is great steak. It's been a great day. The scenery was good. This has been really enjoyable. I'm having a blast. And then you went to sleep. Like, then it went downhill.
Yeah, I tell you what, I would have said anything. I would have ratted them out if they'd let me off that train early. I was like, can they let me off anywhere? I was even thinking about, I'm like, when we stop for one of these fresh air breaks in a minute, I'm just about to get my stuff and just leave. I don't care where I am. I'm just going to go wander off somewhere or something like that and go find a rental car. So I got to get the hell away. But then I remembered I'm a cheapskate. I don't do stuff like that. So I got tortured the rest of the way all up to Seattle.
Man, I will say this though, that one last stretch from like it was like Centralia to Olympia. You remember that? When the train was going like 80 miles an hour and like the cars were really like almost flinging off the tracks because the tracks were so uneven. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember that.
Dude, that was crazy. I actually thought that the train might derail. It was nuts. Like I don't if y'all haven't heard about this part, the trackage between somewhere around Centralia and Olympia was atrocious. Like I don't know who in the world owns the trackage rights in that area. I think it's BNSF, and they're the ones who run the right of way. But the tracks in that area was like the ballast had settled, and the tracks were literally just bending like to the left and the right the whole way, because the Superliner cars that we were in, they were literally flying around and bouncing so hard that we were eating dinner during that time in the dining car, and like the cups were almost getting flung off the table and stuff from time to time from how hard it was rocking. That was nuts. That was honestly kind of fun looking back at it, because it wasn't that long. It was like only like 30 minutes of it, but it was kind of concerning at the time. I was like, damn, I feel like we're bulling it over these tracks to Olympia, and I was like, I don't think these tracks can take this kind of a speed. But anyways, enough of the whole train rabbit hole. I still think trains are a blast though, and I definitely do want to ride the California Zephyr, not the Canyon Spirit. And also, getting back to the original super chat before we move on, because we haven't even gotten to that yet, I do want to go to Moab. I do want to check it out. It's really a cool looking place. I'm not a huge fan of deserts, but in like limited exposure to go down there and just see this, because I haven't seen it yet, I would definitely love to do that. It looks like a really cool spot. And also considering that the Arches National Park is just nearby, that's a really wild spot too, like, you know, geographically, as far as the biome that exists there. I would love to go see this. This would be a really cool thing to do. Just have to find the time, unfortunately, for any of this, and it's hard to find time for anything. But a huge thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on the next one.
And our next one here goes to none other than Bex Chitwood. And thank you very much, Bex, for the $50 support. And we do appreciate that very much. And Bex said, my favorite train trip, Indian Pacific across Australia. And I temper waking up in the berth in the morning to a kangaroo hopping along outside. And here's to the vacay fund in LSA.
Indian Pacific? Oh, wow, this is crazy. So Australia has a train that looks bizarre. I don't even know what model that is. That is, honestly, it kind of looks like something from India. Like, it looks like something they run on, like, the Indian state railways. But
yeah, that's the train right there. Goes when he goes down the track.
Man, that's that one, man, that, like, you always see that video of, like, that Indian person, like, standing literally in the middle of the tracks, like, picking up rocks and, like, inspecting them. And everyone's like, get off the tracks, bro! And they don't get off of the tracks. It's like, what the hell, like, what did they not understand? They're on a active right-of-way, and they're just standing in the middle of it like they don't care. But anyways, oh my, look at that. How long is this trip? Wow, the average length of the train is a half mile as well. Damn! Dude, that's a half mile long passenger train.
That's a long train right there.
Dude, imagine trying to get to the dining car from the rear sleeper, dude. That's like less than like a quarter of a mile or so to get there. That is nuts. A half mile long passenger train. I've never heard of that. I've never heard of such a thing in my life. But let's see here. The trip oh my god, it's 75 hours. Jesus. Oh, wow, I wouldn't make crazy. That is insane. I've never heard of this before, actually, but it goes all the way from Sydney to Perth. I didn't even know you could do that. Like,
you put me on this train right here, and somebody could tell me on the train, you can get your freedom if you step out and fight that kangaroo. I'll be like, absolutely, yes, sir. On this train, man, I am fighting that damn kangaroo. You're gonna see like a Conor McGregor style smackdown out here if it means getting off this train, man. Like, just let me off the thing. Honestly, that is like, if that is a decent way, like if you're trying to get information out of somebody, say we'll send you on a train ride for 70 hours. That's a way. I'm going to have to like cop out of that.
Dude, look at the interior, though. This is, like, pretty posh, actually.
Yeah, it kind of is. It kind of is. I want to ride on that Oriental Express. You know that one that's like the Express Oriental train?
That thing's a ripoff. Like, that is such a ripoff. It's like a $7,000 ticket for like a 18-hour ride. Like, it's unreal.
I just been wanting to blow some money on that Oriental Express. You know, I think at this point, I also, by the way, where's it even go through? It doesn't even really go through anywhere that you like that I want to go visit personally.
Well, nowadays it's not even like like back in the day. I think it was the train from Paris to Istanbul. Nowadays it just goes wherever the hell it wants. Like, and it kind of defeats the whole neatness of it. That's why it's called the Orient Express. It takes you to the Orient, you know, to Istanbul. But nowadays it doesn't even go there like regularly. Let me see here. Let's check this, folks. I also think this thing is now owned by like Carnival or something. Go check that, by the way, because I think it's like the Carnival Holding Group that now owns the Orient Express or something along those lines. But let me see here. It is a really nice train, though. I will say that.
It says Accor and LVMH. So it's not owned by Carnival. It's owned by some other companies.
Huh, that's interesting. But look at these ticket price, £7,880, well, euros actually, for a round trip. So it's a 2-night trip to Venice and Tuscany. That's literally just northern Italy. Like, it's here's Venice. Well, actually Tuscany. Shit, that's not even that far. Isn't Tuscany up here?
I think so. Yeah.
So what? It does a giant loop.
I'm not so sure about that now that I said that, but I guess so. Really.
From Rome to Sicily, 10,000 euros. Look at this. That's Rome. There's Sicily. You take the train down the coast to Sicily. That's hardly even a distance to speak of. And it's 10,000 euros. Like, that's why I think this thing is kind of like a ripoff, in my honest opinion. Because if it was still doing the Paris to Istanbul run, I would say that's pretty cool. Like, you know, you get to go through France, Italy, all of the Balkans, and then get to Turkey, you know, to Istanbul, which is a pretty cool city. That would seem to me like it'd be worth it. But going around in a loop in northern Italy, like, that's just a waste of time, especially for that kind of money.
Waste. Total waste. I know a guy that knows a guy in Italy that could give you a better tour than that for $1.
Man, I know a guy in Italy who can, like, get you an ice bath, but you might be missing a kidney by the end of it.
Who's that?
Oh, it's just Vinny. Like, it's just Vinny.
Vinny, my boy.
Oh my! Look at this. Rome to Istanbul. This is just This is the halfway point of the trip. Rome to Istanbul is 20,000 euros for a one-way trip. This, like, that's why I do not like the Orient Express. Just to be flat out with y'all, it's insanely expensive for it to go absolutely nowhere. It doesn't even go on its historic route that it's supposed to go on, and yet you pay rip-off prices. Like this makes the Canyon Spirit look cheap, and the Canyon Spirit is insanely expensive compared to Amtrak.
Yeah, I think it's just all about getting those Instagram pictures. I think that's what the train's about now, like showing up there and getting those Instagram pics, you know, for the gram type people.
Yeah, I guess it has to be. And also, they don't even show you the interior of the train or anything on here. They just begin your journey. It's like, what if I don't like the interior of this thing? Like, what if I don't like it, you know? But anyways, moving us on from the whole Orient Express rabbit hole, we are on and into the next one. But a huge thanks to you once again for support, Bex Chip, with sharing that interesting railroad adventure with us from Australia. That one I think would be too long even for me. But with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, so our next one here goes to none other than Kerberos 3. And thank you very much, Kerberos, for that $50 support tonight. And we do appreciate that very, very much. And Kerberos said, for train recommendations, will be a fun mini vacation for wife and me.
Okay, so train recommendations. Number one, the Coast Starlight is S tier in my opinion. Beautiful scenery, really fun. I really enjoyed it. California Zephyr is also S tier as well. Some of it's kind of boring, like if you take the whole thing from Chicago to Sacramento, which I think is where it terminates. Some of it can get pretty boring, like through the Plain States, from Illinois all the way to like Denver. Basically that's basically all flat land, so that kind of might be a little bit boring, but still it's an S tier route because of the Rockies and everything else that you get to see once you make it through the Rockies, which is the Nevada desert, the Sierra Nevadas in California, and everything else out there. So that one's a really cool one. Let's see, another S tier one would be the narrow gauge train, the Durango and Silverton, that goes from Durango to Silverton. That's a really cool one. And then finally, probably one of the last ones, if I have to give a fourth recommendation, my fourth recommendation would probably be the Empire Builder that goes through the Cascades and also the Baker-Snoqualmie National Forest up in Washington. It skirts around from Chicago. It goes through Chicago, well, from Chicago through Wisconsin, Minnesota, and then through North Dakota and Montana, basically skirting the northern border of the United States into the Glacier Mountain National Park and Flathead National Forest and everything up here, and then it makes it all the way to Seattle. So that's a pretty epic one as well. So I would say that those 4 would be my top picks.
Yeah, I can't give any train recommendations personally, but if you're looking to spend some cash and do something very adventurous, like I could say, out of all the things you could do around the world that would be considered, kind of out there and also a little bit costly too, the thing that I would probably do is take one of those like smaller, medium-sized cruise ships down to Antarctica. That's one thing I would want to do eventually. Now that's crazy expensive, by the way. I think it's like 25 grand or something like that to do that. Also, you got to cross. I think you got to cross the Drake Passage to do that as well. So it gets very sketchy. Like the waves start getting massive and stuff like that. So if you're a seasick person, it wouldn't really work out that well. But that would be pretty cool. You fly all the way down to the very bottom of South America. You get on the boat from there, and then they take you across the Drake down there to the Antarctica area, and you can see the penguins and stuff like that and everything. That would be pretty cool, like adventure-wise. But what would you do, though? Out of everything you do that actually has some adventure to it, what would you pick?
Me? Picking something for adventure?
Yeah, yeah.
I would probably pick something railroad related because that one cruise.
That ain't no adventure.
Well, I mean, that's an adventure. I mean, shit, getting on a cruise ship and just sitting out in some shitty weather. I mean, that ain't really adventurous either. I mean, hell, you could do that on the Queen Mary going to Britain across the Atlantic and then get arrested on the other end. You could do that. But like, I would say I would do something on land. I'm not really a seafaring type of a person. The one time, folks, we went on a cruise, our folks picked the shittiest cruise they could buy. Literally, like, no joke, and I was seasick the entire time and throwing up all day, every day, nonstop. So I do not have an enjoyable memory of cruise ships. In fact, I think I probably have a phobia of cruise ships. Like, I want to try one day, but I got to really build up some courage for that. Because if it's anything like the first time I ever went on a cruise, I wouldn't be able to make it through. I would get off at whatever port of call was first, and I would fly back home immediately. So I'm not really one for the traveling of the seas. I mean,
Would you go like something else adventurous that'd be kind of a little bit dangerous but kind of exciting if you could survive it, is taking a very long motorcycle trip through the African continent, like along the coast. Now that's a little bit sketchy, of course, because there's a lot of war and stuff like that and conflicts going on, and also people that might want to shake you down. But if you could make it, like taking one of those like big old BMW adventure bikes, like an R1300 or something like that, take that all the way down to South Africa, that would be pretty cool.
That would be pretty cool, and actually, like, that one would be pretty neat. If I was to do something interesting, folks, I would actually go fly to China, and I'd go to the Xinjiang province with a camera and see how quick I get arrested. That would probably be quite an adventurous thing, seeing if you don't get caught. You are going to get caught and arrested, though. Not really a good recommendation. If y'all don't know, there's very bad things going on out in West China, and that's why they don't want foreigners out there filming anything. Or, what I would do? I would go to Taliban-controlled Afghanistan. That seems like an adventure.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think that might be a little too adventurous for some people. I did see that the Taliban made a little vacation video where they were advertising people to come visit, Afghanistan under Taliban rule. And the advertisement consisted of an American with a bag over his head, and they were holding a knife at him.
Really?
Yeah, but it was supposed to be a joke. I'm not sure if anybody found that very funny because they were actually beheading people before they took control. So I'm not sure if anybody found that funny, but that was their version of humor.
I got another one. This would be adventurous. Running through the open fields of the Falkland Islands. If y'all don't know, there's plenty of mines that are still around in the Falkland Islands, so you might run over one. But, I mean, that's an adventure. If you make it to the other side, you can tell people you ran all the way across the Falklands without getting, blown up, I guess,
Yeah, if I really had to take a calm vacation somewhere, I would go down there to those islands down there in the Caribbean, like what? Not the Caribbean. I don't think it's the Caribbean.
I think it's the American Virgin Islands. What?
No. No, I'm not going there. I'm not talking about the Caribbean.
I thought you were trying to make a joke, man. Like, I thought you were trying to make a joke legitimately. Are you talking about the Bahamas?
No, where's Tahiti at and all that stuff?
Definitely not the Caribbean.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, where is it? Like, where is that place?
It's down here in, like, the Pacific Island chains.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm thinking about right here. The Polynesian islands. That's what I'm thinking about. Like this type of islands down here. That would be a cool place to go look.
Yeah, here's French Polynesia right here. Some pictures of it to show.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking about a little bit. I'm really thinking about that place that it's on Flight Simulator. It's that really blue water place, an island somewhere that really looks really nice. The beaches are beautiful, and it's kind of a little bit. It doesn't look like this. It looks like a more natural looking.
New Caledonia? Is that what you're talking about? Like this right here?
No, that ain't it. Let's see here. Flight Simulator 2024.
What do you want? Like, man, we're going to the bluest water in the world. Where do you want?
So let's see here. Most beautiful beach destinations. Let's see if it'll pop up. It should be. It's very popular. So it should. It's Bora Bora. That's what it is right there. That's in French Polynesia. It's Bora Bora. Look that up real quick. Yeah, it's over there.
Right here.
This is it. This is it. This is the one I was talking about. Yeah, this is the one. This is the one you get wallpapers and put it on your computer screen and stuff like that. That type of beautiful island. Oh, yeah, I would love to see that. That is something. Yeah, also, Inferno said it right there. He said it is this one. I bet you can probably stay in a bungalow right there or something like that on the side of the water. This place is beautiful. Like, I would like to see that.
This place looks fake. It looks fake, man. Like, the rainbow, the jagged rocks in the background, the perfectly blue skies. This looks like a level of the back rooms.
Yeah, you know, to get here, you can actually take a seaplane. They land in the little waters right off the coast, and they simply go up and dock with the island there. It's like a seaplane that takes you out there.
You know, there was actually a battle that happened here on the island of Bora Bora.
Yeah, I hate that war. It's always messing everything up.
Yeah, World War II, actually. Here's some of the guns left over from the war. They're still there.
Oh, wow, that's actually kind of neat. It's just a gun right in the middle of the paradise here. That's something else. Look at that.
Yeah, it's pretty neat until you know of all the Japanese guys that died in those caves.
Well, you know what happens. It is war.
They're still there.
They're in there?
Yeah, I don't think they've actually recovered all of the remains from those caves. Like, they only recovered the ones that seemed safe to get, and the rest of them were left behind. So I guess if you go deep enough in there, you'd probably find some skeletal remains of some Japanese soldiers still there.
Huh? That's not very good. But I mean, as long as you stay away from that, don't go near the rotten cave over there. But as long as you stay near the other stuff, it is a pretty nice looking place.
Boy, I do love vacationing on a former World War II battlefield with a ton of dead Japanese under my feet, man. Like, boy, what a place.
Hell, if there's a place to go down in war, I wouldn't mind. I mean, if you had to go down, I mean, this wouldn't be a bad place right here. I mean, if you're fighting the war and you happen to get the short end of the stick, it's like, you know, you're going and fighting in the most beautiful place ever. So I mean, you know, it is what it is.
All right, let me go pull this up, folks. World War II, Bora Bora. I'm very sure I've heard something about a battle going on here. Let's see. Oh, hold up. I'm sorry, everyone. You're actually...
Wait, did you make all that up?
I'm thinking of Iwo Jima. I'm so,
oh my God.
So sorry. Because there's caves somewhere. Like, I saw
made all that up?
No, I didn't make all of that up. In Iwo Jima, that's true. But I was thinking that this place was, like, I was thinking Bora Bora, and I had heard it, like, before. And I was like, I'm pretty sure a battle happened around here. And I was like, this is maybe the one that had to do with the Japanese dying in the caves in huge numbers. That's actually Iwo Jima, which is elsewhere. Like, it's...
Bro, trying to ruin my island dreams. Island boy.
Man, I sat there. I was like, yeah, a whole bunch of guys died. I was thinking of Iwo Jima. No, let me. I have to explain now why I got this wrong. This is Iwo Jima, and down here near Mount Suribachi, there's a whole bunch of caves under this mountain, and a lot of Japanese soldiers died in these caves. And for some reason, when I saw like Bora Bora in that mountainous area in the middle of the island, it made me think of this Mount Suribachi in my head. I was like, I'm pretty sure a whole bunch of guys died under that mountain in the caves. And no, it was actually Mount Suribachi. I just got that completely wrong. So I'm going to have to eat my foot tremendously on that one, because I just psyched Matthew out into thinking there's a whole bunch of dead Japanese guys on some island that they're not.
I wonder how much it costs to get here to Bora Bora. I saw someone in the chat that said they'd been there. I can't. Sadly, the message slipped past me there. I didn't see who said it, but someone said they'd been there. I wonder how much it costs to even like get out here to this place. Oh my God, is that the nightly cost for staying a night?
I'm guessing so.
Well, damn. That's rather expensive. $1,200 a night. And I'll imagine the cost to get transported there is probably worse.
Man, I think this is out of the price range. I think at this point, man, you could take the Canyon Spirit and it'd be cheaper.
Yeah, I would think so. You might just have to illegally migrate here or something like that to take a look at it, like swim in.
Let's see here. What about this one? Oh, this one doesn't have a price. How about the Four Seasons? Oh, wow, $2,000. So, you know, a little bit cheaper. Oh! Bro, I'm turning to Paulie here for like The Sopranos. Oh! Man, jeez, that's expensive as hell. $2,000.
Oh. Look at that. Now I probably wouldn't spend the money on it, but that does look pretty nice though. I will admit that does look pretty good. But the catch is though, you'll go there, you'll experience it, you'll remember it for about a month, and then it'll be like a distant memory, and you'll be like, damn, I spent a lot of money on that, not to really remember it that well.
Yeah, I think that's probably how it would be. Like, that's like it's a cool place, but it's so expensive to go there, and it's definitely as expensive because there's probably a high demand of people wanting to go there. So, you know. Yeah, I mean, a pretty cool place. I just think it's out of our price bracket, unfortunately. Like, I don't think either of us would ever be able to afford to go there. But let's see. How about this one? Oh, you know, just about $1,000 a night as well, and you know, it's like that everywhere. So it's completely off the menu to go here. It's $2,000 a night at most places, and $1,000 a night at the cheapest. Pretty damn expensive. Like that in a normal hotel, folks, would be like a whole week and a half of hotel room stays to just stay one night in Bora Bora, much less the transportation to get out there, which is probably also extremely expensive.
I've heard they're having a buy one get one sell in the UAE on those Palm Islands and stuff like that. Apparently the rates have gone down for some reason. I'm not sure why, but it's become a lot cheaper to go vacation on the coast of the UAE.
You know, I wonder why. I heard that there was like a slight chance of rainfall being liquid lead, but you know, that might just be a part of the reason. Like that might be a part of it, but maybe not all of it. Nobody wants to live on these crappy islands either, like these that exist in like the world thing. Like I don't think anybody's bought these hardly, and they're still all uninhabited. And it's so funny to me that that's the case. Also, it's kind of funny to me that they literally didn't name any of the U.S. islands. They just named California, and that was it. They didn't give each of these a specialized name like the rest of them.
Yeah, I don't understand why, but you know, it is what it is, they say.
Also, why the hell is this island Michael Schumacher?
Oh, you don't know who that is?
Well, I know who it is, but why is the island named after him?
Well, I mean, you don't know who he is if you don't know why that island's not named after him.
Well, oh look, they like while they couldn't name the U.S. states, they did name South of Norway and North of Norway Island. That's neat. They could name two different parts of Norway which don't exist, and yet they can't name a single U.S. state except for California. Huh. Well, anyways, with
Pleasure Island.
Pleasure Island, but the law.
Ain't stepping foot there. You can go ahead and rule that one out.
Wait, where's? Oh, look, Venezuela Island. The U.S. has to go in and nab this one real quick.
I always knew they had that commie on them.
Look at this, man. They got Soho Beach Island.
Soho. What the hell's that? Is that Squidward?
Like it's just Squidward out of the blue. Look at these. I wouldn't want to live out on one of these. That looks terrible.
Yeah, it looks kind of dumpy a little bit. It looks like the evil city of evil over there in the distance, like that sharp tower out there in the distance. Looks like the city where like the evil bastard of the kings would live or something like that.
Oh, y'all want to know a fun fact about the Palm Jumeirah? You want to know one, Matthew?
Yeah, well, yeah.
The water stinks inside of the palm leaf areas because it never filtrates actually, so the water in there is stale. So it ends up, you know, building up with a whole bunch of bacteria and basically having like a red tide in each of these, and from what people say, it reeks.
I could
Damn.
Whoa, I could see that. Excuse me. That was one of those moments there where you take a breath and you're not sure if you're going to take another one, but I'm good. I'm good. Yeah.
All right. Well, with that, we're on to the next one.
You know that feeling when you get that like little bit of a problem, you're like you cough and then you're like, oh, the air's not coming back in. Then you're not sure if you're gonna be able to gasp or you're gonna be able to cough or you're not sure what's gonna happen, but you make it through and then you have to get your adrenaline back under control. But the next one here goes to none other than Jocelyn White, who puts in a $25 support, and thank you very much, Josh, for the support of the 25. And Josh said to pay the bills. Thanks, gents, and take a question from the chat and LLT LSA.
And I thank you so much for the paying the bills support. It helps us to keep the channel running because we're able to do this as a full-time job. And we thank you for appreciating that, Josh and White. We will make sure to get a question from the chat in your honor. So what do we got, Matthew?
And this one goes to Dapper Dragon, who said, it seems we might finally see Crimea return to Ukraine this year, huh?
I think so. I don't think it's a 100% possibility, but there's definitely a good chance of it. That I would be certain of, at least with what's happening right now. So a big thanks to you for support. I hope that has addressed that well, Josh and the White, and long live the Lee Spring Army. And we're on to the next one.
We also have a $21 support from Maxwell Conan, and thank you very much, Maxwell, for the 21. He said, the very notion that Taiwan could be something that could just be thrown away is ludicrous and harmful. It's an invitation for China to harass Hawaii. Meanwhile, we also have a pro-CCP government in Korea, so what gives in LSA?
Oh, well, I mean, that whole thing in Korea, it is what it is, We don't get involved in the domestic politics of that country, at least for now. But I will say, though, that on the other end, generally, giving away Taiwan would be a ridiculous sort of a notion. It's strategically and economically a bad idea to do that. And I would also definitely agree with you on that without a doubt. As far as South Korea kind of being a little bit friendly to the Chinese, the reason why they're doing that, just to actually answer it, is because the current government is trying to stay in a somewhat amicable position where they're not, basically in, about to get in a knockdown, drag-out fight with China, which is right next door. And also on top of that, they're thinking that the United States might not be there for them if they need them to be because of how the foreign policy is being handled right now. So those are generally the reasons why a lot of people are starting to do stuff like that around the world, is because they're not trusting the United States to be there for them. And so that lack of confidence is what's leading them to be a little bit friendlier with China. So a big thanks to your support. I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we're on the next one.
And our next one goes to Mario Speedrun Game. And thank you very much for the 20, by the way. He said, watching a Forcer computer show with my elderly guinea pig, Margaret. She is making happy sound. I do believe it's because she's hearing about the news from the Enforcer's News website. And I like that guinea pig. I always knew I liked those guinea pigs. I always knew that there was something about them that was really good. And I think that one right there understands right there. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say, I think guinea pigs are pretty neat. Look at them.
Yeah, I like those right there, but nothing beats a marmot.
Really, nothing does. Nothing beats a marmot, but these guinea pigs are really cool. I like them. I think they're neat. It kind of reminds me of, like, actual living, cuter version of that big-eyed hamster that I pulled up at the beginning of the show. But beyond that, I gotta say, I thank you so much, and I thank your guinea pig, Margaret, for enjoying the show. And I gotta thank you so much for the kind words and the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 20 from Carabaros 3 once again, and thank you for the second support. They said, living in Texas and Florida before, best way I can describe it, Texas, someone opened an oven on you, and Florida, a sauna. I've actually been to both places, actually. I've been to Dallas, Texas. I've been to the panhandle of Florida in the beach areas. Also been to Miami and the Palm Beach area down there as well. And generally speaking, Florida is a hit or miss. Like, a lot of people glorify Florida a little too much, but you really have to pick a nice pocket of Florida if you really want to be nice. Otherwise, Florida can get sketchy, really sketchy, like sketchier than I've seen pretty much across the entirety of the United States, which is shocking because you hear so much good about Florida, about people retiring there and going there for nice beaches, which they do have nice beaches in certain areas, but Florida is a hit or a miss. Texas is a booming economy, but Texas can be very mundane depending on where you're at. It's very flat in a lot of places because that's just the nature of the state. Honestly, between the two, I'd rather live in Texas between Texas or Florida.
I would have to agree, but I'm also going to say, folks, I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but I feel like the reputations of the state of Texas and Florida are kind of overhyped for what they are. Like, we went to Florida a lot of times growing up, and Florida can be really cool in some places and really bad in others. I mean, like, the whole Florida man thing is a real thing. Like, there's there's like whole habitats of Florida men that live in Florida. You can find them pretty easy if you go like a mile away from the beach. And you know, that's something that once you start to realize that about Florida, that most of it is like that. It's like, you know, it's like this is really kind of overhyped, honestly. And also Texas, like Texas is the definition, in my opinion, especially Dallas, of cookie cutter hell, because it's endless suburbs of basically these same houses and nothing else. Like they have these little commercial districts that they'll build like right here, and then look at that. Suburbs. More suburbs.
Also, Carabo said I was talking about the heat. Also, yeah, I would agree though. Both places are very hot. Like, you know, I would agree with you. Texas was like a kind of like a drier heat, but yeah, I would agree. Florida feels like a sauna. It's that humidity that gets you.
Yeah, Miami would beat you to death with the heat. Like it was unbelievable down in that area when we went there. But also, yeah, speaking of the heat, I would say I would pick Texas heat over Florida heat. But generally though, I would also say like I think both states are kind of overhyped. Like they're nice, like in some places, but they also have like their own negative bits. Like if you hear the political folks talk, like, you know, some people on the right will tell you that Texas and Florida are like a utopia, and it's like I don't know where they went to say that, because I mean, like, to me, like Texas was all right, but I just didn't like the repetitiveness of Dallas. Like it felt like you lived in a liminal space, like, you know, being anywhere around Dallas, and even the airport there is like that too. And then Florida, you know, they got the Florida man thing going on legitimately. And it's like, you know, I just feel like both of them are kind of overhyped in the modern day. It's kind of like how some people like overhype New York City. Like New York City's really cool, but also, you know, it's got its own detractions. You know, it's like, you know, you got to kind of take everything with the good and the bad. And but still, getting back to your original super chat statement, though, I would definitely agree with you. Florida is a sauna. It's hot as hell and humid down there. And also, Brittany Coy said Salt Lake City is overhyped. You know, like I'm gonna say like some of it kind of is like I'll have to agree. Like some of it is kind of overhyped, because I went into downtown today to go check out this this gun store that's down there. It's the oldest one I think in the country. It's been open since like 1916 or something. And I'm not gonna lie, folks, the amount of tweakers I saw wandering around downtown today, I was like, damn, this is a lot of tweakers. I was like, they're like basically everywhere. Like I had to walk by some when I was getting to the gun store, and they were over there going, look, I found records. I was like, okay. I was like, damn. I was like, they're like, kind of all over down here. It's like a really nice looking downtown, but then like you have that going on, like Birmingham kind of. And I was like,
You go to any downtown, you'll find that. It's just the state of the country at this point.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I would say, you know, in a way, like downtown Salt Lake looks really nice, but like, you know, I think a couple of times we went downtown the first time, we just got lucky and we didn't really run into a whole load of tweakers. So I would actually kind of say downtown Salt Lake is probably a little overhyped. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one here is going to go to none other than Carabos 3, once again, who put in a 20. And thank you, by the way, for the support. They said, fun note on that doing construction in Florida during summer, we were required to take a break 1 to 2 p.m., not to get a heat stroke for business, not wanting to pay workers' comp insurance.
Yeah, you know,
We worked out in the heat like a lot when we were younger and stuff like that. Like we lived in rural Alabama, and it was hot there too. I don't think it was quite as humid as Florida, but it was very hot and kind of humid there too. So we're used to the heat, like 90 plus, 100-degree heat outside working and stuff like that. That can be brutal, I can say.
Man, we would be working with no breaks and no water or shit. Always be great. Like like your hand, like thinking back about that. I remember we'd be like hot as hell and nearly dying of heat stroke, and we still wouldn't be allowed to like walk away and get like a drink of water or do hardly anything at all. But beyond that, though, I would have to say that it is hot as hell down there like that, and that would make a lot of sense. Because I think that heat stroke, like people would be dropping out of heat stroke left and right in the middle of the day down there. It is unbelievably hot. But still, a big thanks to your support and help this channel to keep them running. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 20 from Carabros 3 yet again. He throws in the fourth support of the night, and we do appreciate that for the fourth. And they said, was wondering, has any country figured out an effective infantry defense against drones incoming to ground troops on movement? And what are the methods beside emptying their weapons?
The best defenses that we've seen so far by the Ukrainians is a mix of electronic warfare and shotgun-based defenses. That seems to be the most effective ones that we've seen so far, but that's really the only drone defenses that we've seen that are effective to any real degree. So, a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on the next one.
And our next one's going to go to Game Theory, who put in a 20. And thank you, Game Theory, as well. He said, if you ever in Los Angeles, you should visit the Train Travel Town Museum, and it's the main train museum in Griffith Park. Old 1980s shows like Chips filmed there.
Let's take a look at that. That train travel town museum. Let's see. Travel Town Museum. Is this it? Oh, look at that. I didn't know this existed. Let's take a little gander here. Let's take a little gander. So, oh, they got some Western Pacific consolidations. That's pretty cool. Let's see. They got some old rail cars. That's pretty neat. That's pretty cool. Oh, I like that one. That was actually pretty nice. I like that. The nice ornamentations to it. They've got a switcher, a Southern Pacific switcher, oil-fired, clearly. Really cool, actually. Really neat. You know, there's a railroad museum out here. I went and looked at it once. I kind of want to go up there and look at it again, though, because the first time I saw it, I did like a quick glance around. I had to leave because of the rain. But they have a really cool train station up here at the old Union Station, and they have some really cool stuff up here. We actually went up here to see the Big Boy as well the one time it came back through Ogden. But I would like to take a little bit of another gander and take a real good look at it, because they got some neat stuff up there. But a huge thanks to you for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from LSA Animal Audio Enjoyer, and thank you for the 20 as well. They said LSA.
And LSA, and a big thanks to you for helping the channel to keep rolling. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from Samuel Sizamanski, and Samuel said, I'm taking a small trip, and I'm in Hancock, Michigan now, and yesterday I was in Iron Mountain seeing some parks and mine tours and such, and I started watching late, and the first thing I heard was a train story, LOL, and LOTLSA, and Slav Ukraine. Now, you know what's interesting about that, Samuel? Is speaking of mine tours, we have the largest open pit copper mine in the entire world right out here, right next to Salt Lake City. We actually went up to the observation point the other day, and we actually did a small Patreon video that we put on Patreon for that. In fact, it's been on Patreon early, so everybody on Patreon's gotten early access to it. But we could probably show the folks that video if you wanted to, and let them see the pictures of it. We got it. We were standing like right here from where this Google picture's taken.
Honestly, nah, they need to get a pay. I'm just kidding. We'll show it to y'all on Patreon. Let me go get that real quick. Patreon. Let me go get this on the side real quick. Oh, let's see here. We can show y'all this video. Let me get it playing. So okay, so here we go.
Also, by the way, I want to say this before you start the video. By the way, I was breathing a little bit in the video. I don't know why the phone picked it up so much, but if you hear like someone breathing, I'm not out of shape, by the way. I'm in very good shape, but for some reason the phone was like picking up my breathing. So if you hear that, like, sorry about that ahead of time.
All right, so without further ado, here is the video. Also, by the way, that's me in the video. So here we go. What's up, everyone? I'm the Enforcer, and today we're doing a little Patreon exclusive, which is letting y'all look at this thing right here. We've talked about it on air just a couple of times, probably over the past several months, but that right there is the largest open pit mine on the planet, the Bingham Canyon Mine. It is, I think, about 3,000 feet deep from its start to its base, and they generally mine copper. But what's even crazier is that they actually mine a lot of gold out of here too. It's one of the largest gold mines in America, crazily enough. This thing has been dug for 120 years, which you can kind of believe when you look at that, I mean, obviously. And it's also unbelievable. You can see all the way out to the Salt Lake City International Airport out there, the Bingham Canyon Mine, downtown Salt Lake, the entire Wasatch Range, probably all the way up to Ogden, I'd assume, probably up there. It's an unbelievable sort of a sight. Really something crazy. Out behind us, which the camera isn't showing right now, is the city of Tooele, or as I like to call it, Thule, which is off there in the distance, and the Dugway Proving Grounds is further beyond. But I'd have to say, folks, this drive was pretty damn bad, but it was worth it. Really cool sight. Well,
man, I'm not gonna lie, that breathing in the background sounds like a horror film. I was sitting there listening to it in my headphones. I was like, you can literally hear me in the background going, oh. Oh, it's like honestly, it was at a high altitude. It was at 9,000 feet, I think. So it's a very, very high altitude at this location right here, looking down into the mine. But it was wild though. Like you could see like the little mining trucks down there, which are not little; they're massive mining trucks driving around this thing. It's like it's got its own like environment, its own weather patterns and stuff like that. It's such a deep pit.
Man, honestly, it is a crazy thing to see. Like, it was super cool. But with that, we're on the next one.
And our next one here goes to Wolfgang, who put in a $15 support. And thank you very much, Wolfgang, for the 15. And he said, did you notice that there were successful attempt to jam GPS by Russian satellites in high orbit?
I would have to say that I have not heard that, and I'd have to declare ignorance on it. But Matthew, have you heard about that?
Let's see here. I haven't heard. Now, there's always like some type of satellite warfare going on every single day. Like it's kind of like cyber warfare. It just happens. Most of us never hear about it though, because it's usually secret. But I haven't heard about a publicized one. I haven't heard about that.
Yeah, I haven't heard about that either, unfortunately. But I do thank you incredibly for the support. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 10 from Con45, and thank you very much, Con, as well, for the $10 support. He said, guys, there are only a few people who lived in Crimea before 2015 or 2014 that are still alive. Behind closed doors, what happened to over 1 million Crimeans was another really, really bad event, and Russians then moved into their homes.
And I would have to say, I do thank you incredibly for the support, and that is actually true. There has been a lot of calamities that have happened in Crimea since it was occupied and taken over in 2014, and it's been a pretty unfortunate thing. But a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And also, a lot of people are saying that that's the first time I've ever been on camera. I've actually been on camera a lot over the years, and there's been a lot of other times that I've been on camera on Patreon too. So, you know, you actually get to see us a lot more on camera on Patreon than y'all do on the show. But still, a big thanks to you for the support. I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we're on the next one.
You know, I might bring along like a GoPro or something like that, because I'm going to go solo backpacking sooner or later. Like obviously I got to do it like when we have time, obviously, because we do a live stream at night, so it's kind of hard to do that. But when we have a day off, eventually I'm going to go solo backpacking. I might bring like a GoPro with me, because that could be an interesting thing. Like actually go like hike up to the mountaintop, like film it a little bit, like going up there and setting up the camp and stuff like that. That could be a good Patreon video right there. Also, by the way, if a bear or something like that happens to like try to jump on my tent, that could make for some good content too, not clickbait. But jumping into our next one, this one goes to Con45 yet again, who puts in a 10. They said North Korean delivery drivers to drive trucks to Crimea, and Russia needs people who can drive and have no idea how dangerous that road to Crimea is.
Definitely have to say, you know, like the road to Crimea is getting pretty dangerous. Maybe that's why they're trying to bring in the North Koreans, because they'd be willing to sacrifice themselves to get down it, possibly. But who knows? But a huge thanks to you for support. I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 10 from Khan once again, who threw in another 10. And Khan said, in his words, he said, Israel's never been a friend to the USA. He said, we should have cut ties with Israel after the USS Liberty incident, when Israel tried to sink a U.S. warship and blame Egypt.
And thank you for the support, and that's a pretty interesting sort of a take right there. But a big thanks to you once again, and with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 10 from Jake, and thank you, Jake, as well. He said, a rocky train ride in Olympia is how Washington likes it. Check out the 2017 Olympia derailment that closed down I-5 for 3 days and killed 3. And train was going 80 miles an hour at a 30, and you escaped with your life, Matt.
Yeah, actually, that's true. The 2017 Olympia train derailment was a pretty rough one, because I think this was the first time they put the Chargers on the Cascade route, and they ended up derailing because they ended up over-speeding over I-5 and then careening down on the interstate. Pretty unfortunate sort of an incident, honestly. But I do have to say, one to certainly remember, we actually went over that very same track heading on into the city. And of course, we didn't derail, luckily enough. But a big thanks to you so much for the support. I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Robert Krogan, and thank you, Robert, as well. He said, good evening, Enforcers and LSA, and take one from the chat if you please.
And a big thanks to you for the support, Robert. And a big good evening to you. And we will make sure to take one from the chat in your honor. So what do we got?
And this one goes to Horse Girl, who said, where does Ukraine get fuel for their vehicles?
I would say, well, where does Ukraine get fuel from their vehicles? From the gas stations, because they still have working supply lines. So I hope that does address that well, and a big thanks to you for support. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 10 from Otani Sanji, and thank you, Otani, as well, for the $10 support. They said, such a cool copper mine, and let's go Utah and USA. It reminds me of the Falun mine in Sweden. It operated for over 1,000 years and produced 2/3 of Europe's copper, and LSA, and great stream, dudes.
Oh, that's really cool. I've never heard of the Fallon mine. We'll have to try and look into that after the show. That's really neat. But I do have to say, long live the Lee Spring Army, and thank you so much for enjoying the show and supporting it and helping to keep on running. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a $20 support from Steve T. And thank you very much, Steve, for the 20 New Zealand. He said, could 30 smaller drones overwhelming air defense, all attacking the same section of the Crimean bridge structure, have a similar effect to larger cruise missile?
They certainly could if they're able to hit basically the same spot over and over, but that generally relies on them having a great deal of accuracy, and we've seen the Ukrainian drones are accurate, but not pinpoint accurate to be able to hit the same spot over and over again without fail. So they might be able to conduct some moderate damage, but extreme damage like a cruise missile would still be pretty hard to conduct. So a big thanks to your support. I hope that does address that well, and with that, we're on the next one.
We also have here a 10 from Blind Man, and thank you, Blind Man, as well. He said, I'm thinking of running a war game with my friends, setting around the Strait of Hormuz, and how many assets would you think would the U.S. need to retake the strait in a decisive battle and vice versa, and LLT, LSA?
And I would have to say that generally, let's see, how many assets would you think the U.S. would need to retake the strait?
Assets? You mean assets?
Assets, yeah.
He said
How many assets? I said assets. It might come out as asses, but let's see. I would say probably quite a lot. I mean, it's going to take a significant amount of air power and naval power to be able to overcome the strait, but really a great deal of air power. Probably loads of F-16s, F-15s, and also F-35s as well to be able to eventually clear it out little by little. And then also some significant support from the surface combatants of the U.S. Navy as well, like the Arleigh Burkes and whatnot, and the carrier strike groups. So it would probably take a good bit, and it would probably take a couple of weeks at that, but it would be clearable eventually. So a big thanks to your support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on the next one.
Also, I wasn't the only one that heard asses. I saw a swamp donkey say asses. I said, we're gonna bring donkeys into the strait. We're gonna that's that donkey of the day thing I was talking about before. They're gonna bring those donkeys and fix them up. But anyways, though, moving to our next one. This one goes to Octavian Timorsanu, and he said, take one from the chat.
And a big thanks to your support, and we will take one from the chat in your honor, Octavian. So what do we got?
And this one here goes to Tommy Two Tokes. He said, good evening, gents. And good evening, Tommy. He said, do you think with the upgrade on Israeli threat level, will that stop the administration from shipping anti-air missiles, etc. to them?
I don't necessarily think so. I think they're going to continue to support them because of other reasons that are involved. But a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 5 from Torsten Hock, and thank you, Torsten, as well. He said, the U.S. has such a great supply line because of all your friends around the world, so it's probably a good time to stop pissing them off.
Oh, that's what we've been saying. I mean, I would completely agree with you with that. So big thanks to you for support. And with that, we're on the next one.
And we also have a 5 from Sigul. He said, will the U.S. suffer similar gas and oil shortages like Crimea by fall if this Iran war continues and the Strait of Hormuz is an absolute crap show?
I'd say that we probably could, especially if the situation isn't resolved and we start to see that there's physical oil shortages, we could start to run into similar situations like that. And a lot of people always like to downplay the severity of the fuel shortage that we could be facing, saying, oh, if it happens, it's no big deal. People just need to pull themselves up by the bootstraps. Well, it's like, if you can find boots to buy at that point, it'd be pretty hard to get them even. But a big thanks to your support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 5 from Bleep Blap, and thank you for the support. It said, been watching you guys since before Russia invaded. Oh, really? That means you were watching Andrew's channel when it was the gaming channel, I think. But he said, thank you for always being first before all of the other news sites. It's been a wild few years.
And I thank you so much for the kind words and enjoying the show. We're very honored to know that you've been around for so long and enjoying it. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 5 from Remember the Good Times, who said, Malaysian in Beijing here. I went to Tiananmen Square yesterday and asked about the 1989 incident to my tour guide. She choked and hesitated. I would imagine so. You was a brave man asking that in Beijing.
Shit. Almost went to prison.
He said, free Hong Kong. Man, you got balls, man. This dude, remember the good times. This dude's got balls.
Man, yeah, he was remembering the bad times though, asking about that. I mean, damn. I mean, jeez. That kind of a deal in China could get you in some trouble. I mean, you got balls of steel, man. I got to say, a big congratulations to you for that. So a big thanks to you for supporting up with this channel to keep them running. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 5 from Game Theory, and thank you, Game Theory, once again. They said maybe the good train, a good place to meet singles. I don't, honestly, it seemed like a lot of people riding the train really weren't people our age. It was a lot of people that were sort of like in the middle ages, it seemed like. I don't think young people are into trains that much. Like, it's kind of like a bygone sort of like mode of transport, and young people would rather be on a plane, like, I think. So there weren't, I don't remember seeing any people our age on that train.
I remember seeing a couple of people, like, that's because you didn't really go in the dining car a lot. But I remember seeing a couple of people, but there wasn't a whole lot of them. It was kind of few and far in between. But a big thanks to you so much for the support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 5 from Game Theory yet again. He said, future misenforcer can be met on the train. Maybe so. Might be a big age difference, possibly. It might be like 25 and like 35 or 40 or something like that. Someone in the chat said, find a cougar. I think that might be that might be what's happening on the train. But Enforcer, what say you?
I mean, maybe. But with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 10 from Khan. Excuse me. And thank you, Khan, for the support. They said Zelensky's fuel deal with Saudi Arabia is both diesel and gasoline to Ukraine in exchange for a 10-year security package with drones for Saudi Arabia. And Zelensky is smart. Ukraine's fuel is secure.
I would have to say I would agree with that for sure. And a big thanks to you for supporting up with the channel to keep them running. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 5 from Insensum, who said, check out the GAN.
Check out the GAN. Is that? I think that is another train from Australia. Yeah, it is actually the official site of the GAN. But let me show that to y'all. It's basically the same thing, but it's the GAN instead of the Indian Express, which I think the other one was, or the Indian Pacific Express or something along those lines. But still, really cool. And this one actually goes north to south, though. I think from like Darwin to Adelaide. Yeah, it actually does. Pretty cool little route as well. And I've heard that this one, though, has run into some issues in the past. Like, there was like a mudslide on the track in the middle of nowhere that wiped the track out, so the train had to come to a stop, and it sat there for like 10 or 12 hours or something while they were trying to clear it, or they were trying to figure out what to do with the passengers. A pretty wild sort of a thing, but honestly, like, Australian railways are a whole other animal. I think there's nothing like them in the world. It's a pretty crazy sort of a thing. And there's the first-class restaurant on the GAN. They all seem rather nice, though.
Yeah, it does seem kind of nice. They had those like virus shields up.
Man, well, this was in 2009.
I thought they already had them pre-installed, I guess. They already knew.
Crikey, mate, there's this thing called COVID coming. Big thing in the future. Not big yet. We're still getting ready. Man, it's like, all right, well, you know, it's like they were thinking ahead into the future. But still, a big thanks to you for the support. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have here a 5 from Old Hednar, who said, what does Putin and Mujtaba have in common? Neither will come out of the bunker while denying they're even in the bunker.
You know what? You ain't wrong. And a big thanks to you for support. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 5 from JB Najalki, who said, a bit jealous of all those beautiful places. I live in Warina Cove, SA. It's beautiful, hills and kangaroos, and an awesome coast, but nothing else for kilometers.
Let's see, Warina Cove. Let's take a look at that. Oh, this actually looks like southern England, really.
Yeah, it kind of does. It kind of has that Cornwall coast kind of look to it.
Honestly, this is a pretty good thing to be stuck in. Oh, it's a predator. Man, like, these things are gonna kill you. Man, these things actually are pretty scary. Like, if you see them out in the wild, like, they're pretty dangerous, actually. But still, that looks really pretty. I like that. You live in a nice place. You're lucky, you know? You're very lucky. Be fortunate for what you have, because you have something that many other people don't have. Is kind of the scenery like you see there. But a big thanks to you for the support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on the next one.
And also a huge shout out to Uncovered Cube and Plazath for each putting in a $2 support. And we appreciate the both of you, Uncovered Cube and Plazath, for supporting the channel yet again. And we also have a 2 from Hoodoo, who said, just how are drones going to help us in Iran? Well, the main thing it'll do is the drones. The only way to really properly fight drones is with drones. And that's what Ukraine found out. That's why they use physical drone interceptors. They'll send up a drone that's faster than the attacking drone and they'll simply knock it out of the sky. And that's how they take care of it. That's the cheapest and most effective way to do it. So that's why drones are important. Now, if we go in on the ground, they'll be important because I'm sure Iran's going to be using FPV drones to attack our soldiers, just like Hezbollah is doing to the IDF right now. And we'll have to be able to combat that with drones as well. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say the drones would help out in that measure, and also on top of that, they would help out with being able to conduct long-range strategic strikes against the Islamic Republic of Iran without needing to use a $1.5 million Tomahawk for each strike. Instead, we can use a $10,000 one-way attack drone instead, which is a lot more affordable, and we're able to afford hundreds of those drones for the cost of a single Tomahawk, and therefore conduct a great deal more damage, and also get more key targets knocked out in a cheaper fashion. So that's generally why I would say the drones are necessary to be able to try and help us out in Iran. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Game Theory who said, would you ever buy a capybara as a pet?
You know, I'd say no. Like, I generally don't think that these things are pet worthy. Like, they're cool and they're really cute and all, but I just don't think they make good pets. So I would say no. But Matthew, what do you think?
I wouldn't have one of these things right here. Honestly, it's a huge rat. Like, I get that people like them and stuff like that, but it's really a big rat. Like, out of all the things you can have as a pet, this is probably one of the last things I'd want as a pet. Also, it looks very indifferent, like too much indifferent. Like, it seems like it doesn't really have anything going. Like, it's just kind of like here,
Man,
which is fine. That one looks kind of friendly.
Like these people here are like, look, a capybara. The capybara's like, food. Man, like, it's just like thinking of something else totally different.
Single track minded. That thing's thinking about eating. That's all it's thinking about right now. Honestly, I'd rather have like a corgi or something like that. Like, if we're talking about like exotic animals, I don't think you can legally have a honey badger. But if it was legal, I'd probably have a domesticated honey badger. That thing would make a great guard pet. Could you imagine having that thing at the front door? Like, nobody would be messing with you.
Man, honestly, I would agree. No one would mess with that. That's unbelievable, really. But with that, it is time for us to get on and into the next one.
We also have a 5 from Prime Rib, and thank you very much, Prime Rib, for that support. And they said, take a cruise to the Deception Island in Antarctica and look it up.
Let's
You don't
see.
even want to know why they call it Deception Island. You don't even want to know.
It's safe. It's not safe. Like, bro, that's the deception. It's like, there's a cruise to Deception Island right there.
Well, yeah, they call it Deception Island because you don't know what's on the other side of that little small, like, mountainous part right there.
Oh, really? What's on the other side? The Yeti?
Nobody knows, but I'm not sure if you want to know.
Nobody
You've heard all the
knows.
stuff about Antarctica, right? You've heard all the stuff.
Yeah, there's like UFOs and aliens and Nazis and commies. I mean, there's basically anything and everything that you can think of is down there, actually.
Yeah, you got to watch out. There's like a wall, like we're talking about like billionaire type people, by the way. You know how they like those gated communities and stuff like that. They put up a gated ice wall. That's what they did. They had to protect it with the ice wall, so you can't see on the other side of it. But on the other side, I'm telling you.
Oh, wow, there's oil storage tanks on this island.
Why do you think they need those down there?
Maybe it's to keep the Nazi secret science experiments under wraps. Maybe they're trying to do something like, I can't stand like the stuff that comes on like the History Channel at like 12 in the morning. It's like, why are these here? And it's like, it's because of like an American expedition or something. And they go through this whole rigmarole to get to nothing or just get to the most mundane explanation ever.
I don't know if people understand, but it's like, even if you had billions of dollars, like, you have to physically get supplies here to actually live in Antarctica. Like all these conspiracy theories that, there's like the billionaires live here, like secretly or something like that. It's like, first of all, it's nearly impossible to get stuff down here, for one. And the only people living here are scientific research teams because they're there to do scientific research, and they live literally inside, like they're on the moon or something like that, like inside these little like housing pods and stuff like that. It's very inhospitable. I'm not even sure why you'd want to live down here, even if you wanted to hide out.
The truth is, man, is that people who come up with those conspiracy theories, they're not thinking with a level head. Like honestly, like to think somehow the whole higher end, like, this is the biggest conspiracy theory, is that like the Germans from World War II were down in Antarctica. It's like, how the hell would the Nazis even get a U-boat to Antarctica? It's like they didn't even have the range to hardly make it to the United States. How in the world would they go all the way from Germany to Antarctica? And then they're like, but it's the diesel electric one, or like the battery powered one. It's like they're all battery powered. It's like they still don't have the range. It's like, so how do you get to that point? And also, how in the world did they get all of the construction equipment down there on the U-boat to build a giant bunker under the ice? Like that, all that doesn't make any sense. Like it's like some sort of crazy like schizo stuff going on with that. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a $20 support from Truckin' Chef, and thank you very much, Truckin' Chef, for the 20. He said, check out Zion National Park. I used to live there, and kangaroos will sit in the water chest high and wait until you get in the water and then drown you and take one from the chat and LLT LSA.
Yeah, those kangaroos.
They have kangaroos in Zion Park?
No. He's just talking about kangaroos in general. Like, no, they were in Zion.
I was about to say, man. This is mind-boggling. I didn't know that. I could have sworn there were no kangaroos down here in Zion National Park in Utah. But I get you now. I got you.
Oh, no, there's no kangaroos down here. But Zion National Park is a really cool place. I would love to go down here. It looks really neat. I like to hike around, take a little gander, take a real look around. That'd be cool. But sadly, there is no looking around for now, at least, because it's like a 4-hour drive down here. So, I would love to see it, though. It does look really cool. And, those kangaroos are dangerous. Like, I don't like them all too much now, knowing about how dangerous they are to people in the wild. But still, a huge thanks to your support and help this channel to keep it running. And long live the Lee Spring Army. And with that, we're on the next one.
And with that, folks, it is now time to jump into our Morse code decoders and some live chats. But once again, a huge shout out to everybody once more for supporting the channel tonight, once again, with the Super Chat support. And our Morse code decoders tonight were Paul, Kevin, Mason, Joni, Norm, Arabelle, Her Royal Fluffness, Kush, Kovateric Sire, and Brian. And they said that the Morse code said Russia went from saying that they're winning the war to now they're losing. But it's good. LLT, LSA.
And that is the sound of money. Y'all hit that dead on the nail. That is the Morse code message of the night. And I got to congratulate y'all greatly for getting that correct time and time again, because y'all are always getting that right. Y'all are always getting it dead on the nail. And it's always an amazing and fantastic thing. And so a big shout out to Lee Spring Arsenal Corps once again. And with that, we're on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one is going to go to none other than Activista, who said, what is the drinking water situation in Crimea?
Generally sparse. Like it's available, but it's generally sparse because of the ongoing drought that's existed in the region. So I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to AF Kaplan, who said, if Ukraine can successfully liberate Crimea, would Russia retaliate by trying to explode the ZNPP, or will they do something even more drastic?
I would generally say they're probably not going to do much of anything. It's kind of going to be like the beginning of the war when they were threatening nuclear reactions to Ukraine because they had survived. And then the Ukrainians pushed back in the Balaklia counteroffensive and in Kherson. And they probably would end up doing nothing and just trying to kind of gloss over the fact that they had just suffered a blistering defeat and a significant loss of territory. That's what I would think. But generally, we're not entirely sure. I don't think they'll ever do something as extreme as that, though, because blowing up the ZNPP is basically using nuclear terrorism, and that would be something that would open up the Pandora's box of who knows what would happen afterwards if they tried to do something like that. So I hope that does address that well. And with that, also, I see someone saying you need to research your U-boats. Well, I actually am a history major to a degree, and World War II was like one of the big ones because it's a huge topic just for anyone. But the milk cows that you're talking about, the resupply U-boats, were used just to extend U-boats and their range to the east coast of the United States. And once the milk cows were blown up, they weren't able to get to the east coast of the United States anymore. As far as a U-boat getting to Antarctica, maybe in peacetime they made it to Antarctica when there was no threats. But once they started getting blown up by strafing runs by Allied aircraft that were on anti-submarine patrols, they weren't making it to Antarctica. Like, making it somewhere in peacetime is very different than making it there in wartime. And in the middle of an active war, when people are trying to hunt you down, putting Mustache Man on a U-boat and trying to ship him off to Antarctica is not happening. Like, they're going to find that U-boat because it's going to surface because they have to recharge the batteries and to run the diesel engines. And there were so many anti-submarine patrols in the Atlantic alone, they would have found that U-boat and they would have destroyed it. Basically, no U-boat survived the Second World War. Very few of them did. And if they tried to escape at that point, considering the kind of supremacy they had, they wouldn't have been able to leave a port in Germany even to get Mustache Man to Antarctica. That's why I'm saying it's impossible. So I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the final, actually, I believe the second to last question of the night.
It's actually the final question of the night.
Oh, and so with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And this one goes to America the Best, who said, do you think that with the ongoing fuel shortages on Crimea, that this would give Ukraine a good opportunity to try to take it back?
I would say yes. I think this is probably going to be Ukraine's best opportunity to try and retake the area, at least in my opinion, because the supply situation is so bad, the strategic position is untenable for the Russians in that area. So I think that they probably will be able to take that back at some point in the future. And so, a humongous thanks to you so much once again for an incredible question around the stream off on. And with that, folks, we've actually reached the end of tonight's stream at 3 hours and 34 minutes in. I've got to say a humongous thanks to each and every single person who has been watching over the course of this night. We've been able to see that there was a peak viewership of 17.3 thousand people over the course of the stream, and 115,000 people have watched the stream before it ended. I have to say a humongous thanks to each and every single one of y'all so much once again for watching, and we will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news from around the world. And if there is a short war video to be made, I, the Enforcer, will be the one making that short war video. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, Ram Slava, long live the Lee Spring Army, and long live the Republic.
And with that, folks, a huge shout out to the over 115,000 viewers that we had tonight. And we will see you all tomorrow night on Sunday, of course, for the Sunday night fundraiser stream. And of course, be sure to join us for that. It'll be once again another big night of news, and we'll have to see what happens. Usually on Sunday, it's supposed to be a calm day, but the last few Sundays have not been calm whatsoever in the news cycle. So we'll be looking out and seeing what's happening tomorrow. You never can tell these days what's going to happen. It's like life of a box of chocolates, like that fellow said, that Gump, when he was sitting on the bench. But we'll see you all tomorrow, and thank you all once again. And of course, Slava Ukraine, Hiram Slava, get some rest, and good night.